as fresh as the day that I put it in this. Canning jars are my best friend. This is a quart, this is a half gallon, or 2 quarts. And these are the ones I buy the most of, and basically anytime we ever do go to a regular store, we just try to swing by and get more. And you know, my husband used to roll his eyes and say, we don't need more, and now he's bringing them home too, because he's putting his tools in and his screws and his nails, and it's like, it's so easy to see what you need and where it is. There's a gazillion uses for them. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, let me get my glasses. There we go. These are the if you're interested, and I've also got my contact information if you have any other questions. We're going to do dehydrating, freezing, vacuum sealing, pickling.
Call the meeting to order. The City of the Sonoma regular City Council meeting, December 15th, 6:02. Can I invite Steve, lead us for Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Felder.
Here.
Councilmember Lowe.
Here.
Councilmember Agrimonti. Vice Mayor Barnett.
Here.
Mayor Ding.
Here.
Thank you.
I want to report to everyone. Today, we don't have any reports for closed session, simply because we didn't have any closed session meeting. Right now, we want to approve our tonight's agenda. Any changes to agenda tonight? Council and Federal? How was Sanjo? If any changes for it? All right. So we'd like to move to the item number 1. Oh, you should have moved a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda as is.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Felder.
Here. Yes.
Councilmember Lowe.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Barnett.
Aye.
Mayor Ding.
Aye.
Motion passes 401.
Regular agenda number 1, comments from the public. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Under the state law, unless other permitted under the Brown Act, the merit of the minutes, the matters presented here will not discuss or take any action by the City of the Council at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make the comments at a time when the item comes up for council consideration. Upon the being acknowledged by Mayor, please step to the podium and speak into the microphone. Begin by stating and spelling your name. Members of the public presented here in the chamber will be called first, and then those who are attending the meeting via the Zoom. Thank you.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, city staff, my name is Karen Collins, and Steve Page and I are here as the co-chairs of the Park and Recreation Task Force. And we felt that it's the end of the year, and we thought we'd just give you a quick update in terms of where we are. We get questions, you know, what's going on. So we thought we'll just advise you today, and then maybe do a detailed report sometime after the first of the year and answer questions that you might have. So I'd just like to start and just give you a little bit about the timeline. This started in September of 2019. And there were just a lot of questions in terms of people wanting, you know, what does the city have in terms of park and recreation? You know, how do we access it? Who can go to the classes? You know, what's at the parks and so on. So we came to City Council with a broad brush of support from individuals and community organizations, and the City Council at that point passed a resolution 5-0 to establish a task force and a work plan to look into this. Well, then we had the pandemic, we had fires, we had homelessness, so we really didn't make any progress in 2020. And so one of the council members at the time, Amy Harrington, asked the council to move this up on the priority list so that it could get some attention. So one of the last things that Kathy Capriola did before she left office, or left the city staff, was to come up with a work plan and appoint a task force. And I would just like to say that the task force it includes all of your recreation partners. It includes Field of Dreams, Boys and Girls Club. It includes regional parks. It includes Catalyst Fund. It includes the Overlook Trail. It includes La Luce. So it really spans a broad brush of community representatives that participate. We started meeting in February this year, and I think we've had about 4 meetings so far, all of whom are by Zoom. We're getting to know each other through masks and Zoom, but we're hoping to have in-person meetings perhaps after the first of the year. And the 4 phases, I just might mention, one thing is to really collect the information that's out there so that people will know, what recreation programs are offered in the city of Sonoma, both by the city and by their partners and other nonprofits, and to publish that and get that information out. The second phase is to take a look at 8 other cities that are similar to us size-wise and demographically, and see how they handle their park and rec programs, who comes to them, how they pay for them, how they measure their success. The third one is to really reach out to the community after we have the information and see what the community, see if we have any gaps or if there's anything that they would like to see us incorporate in recommendations, and then that would come back to City Council for your consideration and any action that you might want to take. And Steve will bring you up to date on just where we are with our subcommittees.
Sure. Thanks, Karen. Steve Page, Sonoma. Really two efforts. One that just got underway, we were able to secure a grant from the Catalyst Fund to underwrite a study by the Potrero Group, because one of the things that I've always believed is that rather than come up with your own ideas, if you can steal them from others, that it's always a much more productive way to go. So the Potrero Group we have vetted them, hired them, we've had scoping sessions with them, and they are just now getting underway. The idea is that they will identify a series of communities that are very similar to this community in terms of the resources, the size, the demographic makeup, and particularly a circumstance where you have a large part of the valley that's outside the incorporated municipality and people who are all using the same resources. We are hoping to have the results of that study in the spring, which will help guide our work and come up with ideas on how we can advance the goals that we have here, which is sort of leads into the second piece of this, which is the marketing committee that I'll be chairing in the coming year. And our goal will be, as we catalog and identify all the recreational resources in the community, to find ways that we can make the information about those resources available as broadly as possible. There are a lot of folks who are sophisticated enough to go out and seek and are familiar with what's out there and seek those out and take advantage of them for themselves, their families. There's also a broader swath of people that we want to make sure are included, and that we don't rely on people to be sophisticated when it comes to digital media and a variety of other ways that people glean their information. So we have a pretty broad-based committee who will be looking at marketing, how people come up with their information, how people communicate with one another, and make sure that we have an equity-based program that really does the proper outreach and makes these resources available to others. So those efforts are getting underway. The Portero study has started. We'll get started with our marketing plans in the coming months, and hopefully have much more substantive report for you sometime after the first of the year. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen and Steve. Any more public comments? Right now it's time. If no, I'd like to go to the next item, number 2, meeting dedication. No. All right. Let's go to item number 3, presentation. I would like to ask city manager, see if any item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, that our Public Works Director, Colleen Ferguson, also known as Fergie, is going to retire at the end of the month, and this is her last council meeting. So I thought maybe under presentations I could just say a few words if that's okay with the council. So Fergie's been your Public Works Director, City Engineer since July 2017. She's retiring after a 30-plus career working in the public sector with Sonoma and Santa Rosa. I believe 38 years or so as a civil engineer. Some of the key projects that she's worked on here in Sonoma is complete the construction of West Napa Street Water System Replacement Project, Depot Park improvements, develop the city's 5-year capital improvement project, several pavement bicycle safety projects. Actually worked really hard with Caltrans to try to get their Highway 12 repaving project done. Completed our 2018 Water Master Plan update. And as you know, she worked diligently to kind of bring to construction the Friar Creek Pedestrian and Bicycle Bridge project, which should be beginning construction soon and hopefully be completed by summer of next year. So just a couple words on that, but more importantly, I just want to be able to thank Colleen for her dedication and service to the city. She'll be missed, and I just wanted to really thank her for all her efforts and let her know that Sonoma's a better place because of her efforts, and wish her a happy retirement. So that's all I have to say at this moment.
Thank you so much, city manager. Do you want to say any words to our?
I'd just like to say congratulations. I aspire to your next role in life. I haven't figured out how to retire, so perhaps you could, shed some light on it. But in the short time I've been able to work with you, I just think you've been always so gracious, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Lowe, and thank you, City Manager Choi.
Thank you so much. And I
think Bob wanted to
oh,
say
Bob,
something.
yeah, go ahead.
I would just like to echo Sandra's words, and thank you very much, Fergie, for all that you've done to help the city. So we appreciate your efforts and wish you well in your retirement.
And I just would like to add to that, thank you again for all the service to the city of Sonoma. We truly appreciate it. It's obviously been a very unique few years, and you've had to handle a lot, and I think you've done it well, and I just wanted to again thank you and join the council in thanking you for your efforts.
Thank you so much, Colin. Yeah, you helped me get through with the county water advisory committee. Every time you prepare the documents and answer my questions, when we address any issues, you always give me some of the data and how to and approve those kind of data. I really appreciate your quality service and the contribution to our Sonoma community, and will be highly appreciated. And also, you are the role model for the future and director for the public work. Thank you. If any in the public, no. I would like to go back to the public comments, and we open the public comments to all the residents here in the chambers, but I forgot another chance to the Zoom, through the Zoom. Latanya, could you please check anybody on the Zoom? Yeah, maybe we can retroactively ask them to make the comments for
It
the
looks
public.
like Sue Casey has her hand raised.
Okay.
She may have wanted to say something.
Sure.
I want to say a word about Fergie, and I just wanted to thank her for all her years of service and for her years of service to Sonoma, and to congratulate her on her retirement and to let her know we'll miss her. And I know that this next chapter in your career will be exciting and fun, but just wanted to say my thanks and congratulations as you move on.
Thank you, Sue. Any in the public comments? No? All right. Let's move to item number 4. Consent calendars. All items listed on the consent calendars are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the council or staff request a specific item to be removed for a separate action. I want to ask if anybody in the council want to pull any items.
I don't actually want to pull item 4.10, but I do want to make a comment. I believe that there is an error on the calendar. It is showing the Planning Commission is meeting on the 3rd Thursday of the month, and they actually meet on the 2nd Thursday of the month. So if you just make that correction to the calendar.
Or maybe you can work on that later on and answer question to Councilmember Felder. Any?
We'll make that correction. That's just,
Okay.
that's an oversight. Okay.
How about other council members? Do you have any item want to pull? How about you? Okay. I have the one item want to pull. That is in a 4.7. If any comments from public? That is a none. Okay. I need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I forgot to point out on.
Oh, okay.
Oh, before you go to Zoom
Okay.
comments, I forgot to point out on item 4.9.
Okay.
We listed $150 an hour for the interim public works director, but actually to the firm the number is $190 per hour. But it doesn't affect the overall contract amount. We just had the wrong number in there.
Okay.
Actually, can we pull 4.9? I have a question
Sure.
about that. All right.
Yeah. I would like to,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Zoom public comment.
yeah, some public comment because.
No hands raised on Zoom.
All right. So let's come back to council. I needed to motion to approve.
Yeah. So I move that we approve the consent calendar with the exception of item 4.7 and 4.9.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Felder,
Aye.
Councilmember Lowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Barnett,
Aye.
Mayor Ding.
Aye.
Motion carries 401.
Thank you. So the first one is 4.7. I have a very simple question. That is the third paragraph. It mentions the second and a half of the American Rescue Plan and the Fund was not approved. I want to know current status, if any requirements, any required documents we need to submit, or any difficulties. Yeah.
Approved at the time we did the budget. It has since been approved. We've received the first payment. We've submitted all the documents, and it was approved.
What kind of documents we need to submit? Try to apply for approve for American Rescue Fund.
We've already submitted them, but we had to send some forms in and give them some documentation on our lost revenue.
Okay. Do you have a time frame?
We received it in
sorry.
July, and the second installment we received in July 2022. Is that how it works, Sue? So we received
Yes.
it July 2021, and we'll receive it July 2022.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. That is my question. I already got an answer. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Barnett.
So you can.
Should the public? Open to the public. Any comments? None. Latanya, could you please check the Zoom?
We don't have any raised hands, Mayor Ding.
All right. I would like to move to approve 4.7, accepting the monthly and the financial report, November 2021. Any second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Felder,
Aye.
Councilmember Lowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Barnett,
Aye.
Mayor Ding.
Aye.
Motion carries 401.
Next item is 4.9, please.
Yes. Yeah, I just had a brief question about, is this sort of standard practice when we lose a department head? I guess my first question about it, and that we sort of contract out with sort of an interim, is that what we've done in the past? And I guess my first question would be, would there be like an internal candidate that might be able to do the job in a more cost-effective manner? And was that considered?
So your most cost-effective manner, I think, would be if I took over acting public works director. That'd be the most cost-effective approach.
Are you interested?
Actually, no, because I've done public works director for 7 years, and it's not the most effective way to do things. But in a short-term period, we could do it. But I think it'd be better to bring on someone with that engineering expertise to really help staff during this transition period.
But I'm sorry, there are going to be two contracts, right? We have the engineer firm, but then we're also contracting out with somebody else.
Yes, so
Yeah.
you would have the firm GHD would actually be the city engineer that
Yeah.
will sign the documents, and that actually provides your continuity because they're always our on-call engineering service. And Pat Eccles, who would be the retired public works person, serve as the interim for 1 or 2 days a week, provides kind of your overall guidance, advisory leadership, provide some oversight of the city engineer, and provide a resource for staff.
Okay. And there's just no one in the department that could do that in a sort of more, in terms of continuity.
Well, you would only have one person. That would be Chris Pegg, your operations manager. But I think what you'd be doing is you'd be putting like basically another job on top of what he already has to do.
Okay.
And I don't think that's the most effective way. It like I said, the easiest thing or the most cost-effective thing, not necessarily the most efficient or best way, would be for your city manager to assume that role on the interim basis.
Okay. I just had those questions. I don't know if anyone else.
Anything else? Nothing. Any public comments? No. How about the Zoom?
No, Mayor Dane, no Zoom comments.
Thank you. Right now, we need to have an motion.
I move approval.
Who seconds?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Felder,
Aye.
Councilmember Lowe, Vice Mayor Barnett,
Aye.
Mayor Dane.
Aye.
Motion carries 401.
All right. Let's move to 4.10. We already, got an answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's move to next agenda item 5, public hearing. Today we don't have any public hearing. Agenda number 6, regular calendar. 6.1. Today we have another workshop regarding the alternatives report for Sonoma Development Center, specific in the plan, and providing the comments to staff to submit to Sonoma County. Today we just follow from the last meeting, December the 1st. So the city manager, Gary Toy, could you please give us some little bit of introduction?
Okay, sure. I think you covered most of it, but as you recall at your December 1st meeting, you received a presentation from county staff regarding the alternatives report for the Sonoma Development Center specific plan. And after receiving numerous comments, the council requested staff schedule a workshop for this meeting so you could receive additional public comments and a little more focused discussion, a more informal atmosphere of question and answer. At that time, you indicated it'd be great if county staff can be available, which Ross Markey is available to answer questions. You indicated you didn't need another presentation on SDC, but just more of a question and answer period. And the council indicated at your December meeting, after you conduct the workshop, you'd like an opportunity to provide formal comments to staff that then we can then submit to the county for comments on the SDC alternative plan. So, with regard to the workshop format, it's informal kind of Q&A. I think what I would suggest is you would start with any council questions or comments you may have for county staff to answer. Then you can move into the public comment portion, in which case it really depends how many members of the public, but normally you would say for the initial comments from people or questions, you'd say maybe limit it to 2 or 3, get through everyone who wants to speak, and then you can go back around for additional follow-up questions. Maybe keep the workshop to 30 minutes or so, really up to the council. At the completion of your of the public comment and question and answer, then you would go ahead and provide direction to staff. Generally what we would do is we'd take all your comments, put it into a letter format, basically send it on to the Board of Supervisors and the county staff for comments on SDC. Normally, we would include a link to this meeting and the last meeting so they could actually watch it if they wanted to see the actual public comments. So with that, that's pretty much a staff presentation.
That's great. So next, we would like to invite Ross Markey give us a presentation.
No, he's actually not going to give a presentation. I think that was the council direction.
Okay.
Was no presentation, but this now would be the time for you to ask your own questions and then open it up for the public to ask questions.
All right, thank you. So now, right now, and we'd like to see if council members have any questions.
Yes. To whom are we addressing these questions?
He's going to be virtual, so
He's
I think
virtual,
you need
okay.
to elevate him to a panelist.
Okay.
He is? Okay.
Thank
I see.
you.
It shows Sue on
Hi,
there.
yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Hi.
Ah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My initial question, Mayor Ding, if you don't mind, is just if you could walk us through sort of the timeline that we're facing with regard to the county's decision-making process.
Sure, I can take that question. Hello.
Hi.
Ross Markey. I'm a supervising planner here from Permit Sonoma. And thank you to Mayor Ding and the City Council for having us tonight. I'm also joined by Rajiv Bhatia from Diet and Bhatia, who has helped the county prepare the alternatives summary report. So our schedule and timing for comments, we have a Board of Supervisors meeting coming up on January 25th. So we have just finished a survey and collected comments, initial comments on the alternatives report that we launched on November 1st. And we are still accepting comments on the project, and we'll provide email address where additional comments can be received. And I guess I could provide that to Mr. Choi. And I would invite Rajiv if you have any other comments on the schedule that you'd like to add.
Sure, Ross, thank you. And good evening, Mayor Ding and members of the City Council. In addition to comments on the alternatives, we actually have not launched the EIR process yet. We are hoping to release a notice of preparation for an environmental impact report in early January. So we will invite comments on the scope of the EIR in January. And this is just a meeting of the Board of Supervisors to review the alternatives, provide us direction on a project to include in the EIR and in the specific plan. Later on, we will have the actual specific plan and the EIR release for public review, but that will not happen until summer of next year. So we are hoping to release those in June of next year. And there will be ample opportunities to comment on those plans and the EIR at that time. So we are still somewhat midway through the process here.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. This is very helpful. So at the meeting on January 25th, you'll be looking at the scope of the EIR, but not the specific plan? Is that fair to characterize it?
Let me just clarify, it's not a meeting on the EIR at all. The Board of Supervisors will look at the alternatives and give us direction on a preferred alternative, or, they'll say we like this from A and this from B and this from C, but we like something else, and now go ahead and flesh it out and develop a preferred plan, which will then form the basis for us to delve deeper into the EIR and then write a specific plan with.
Great. So that's very helpful as well. So what I'm hearing is that although we had some alternatives that were presented, that the Board of Supervisors in January could make comments and say, this part looked really interesting. We'd like to keep that in, but we'd like this to be modified and come back to us. So it's not a matter of choose one of these three. And so we could tonight in our comments say the things like that we sort of saw that we would like to change or we like or whatever. That's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Can I follow up,
Sure.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Rajiv, how are you? Good to see you.
Good.
I have a question about following up on Councilwoman Lowe's comments. The most important part of an EIR, from what I remember, is the project description. How specific does the project description have to be, and at what point in the timeline will that be finalized?
Yeah, so one thing to remember is that it'll be that our project is actually a plan as opposed to a specific development project. So we may not get into highly specific numbers on numbers of specific number of housing units or square footage of this, because ultimately it's a plan that'll play out over 10, 15, 20 years time. So it'll be specific enough in the sense that we will, portray as to what is envisioned as the overall palette of uses that'll happen out there and a general description of what we are seeking to do. We haven't written the project description, so I cannot, totally, foreshadow what will be in there. But I don't think we'll have very specific housing unit counts or something like that in there. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to preserve the flexibility, because the future is not, possible for us to predict.
Right.
And we may have a range, or we may outline what the land uses are that are contemplated here.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for answering our questions. My understanding, EIR, that is for a specific project. However, I feel like the three alternatives are not what we are expecting. A lot of the comments, a lot of the negative, the comments available, and so I'm wondering if any chance we can find an alternative for, and then later on, and then we can start an EIR. Because a lot of the people think these are the three alternatives, very, very similar. I totally agree. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to jump in on this thing because this is my concern. I think that right now you're facing a situation where you have a rather significant restriction that the project has to be financially feasible, and that really limits the alternatives that you can put forth to satisfy that restriction. And is there any way that we can look for some relief from the state, so to provide some help from the state to take care of the deferred maintenance, which is a huge restriction on the project right now? And I think if we got any relief from the state, that might give us the window of opportunity to produce a better project, which wouldn't have that impediment imposed upon it.
Ross, do you want to take that on? I mean, we are working under, the state has passed a very specific legislation, a law that pertains to our site that calls for certain overall objectives. And you're right, in your observation that they have to be financially feasible. That's one of the challenges in front of us. The state also is looking to actually promote housing at the site. So even if there are funds available, the principal objective is to promote housing at the site. That's what the state law says. So it isn't like if the state came up with $100 million, we'll suddenly say that the place is going to be open space. I mean, the fundamental objective is to provide housing at the site. Certainly any monies can be helpful because we have a shortfall. Even with these alternatives out there, there is a challenge. In addition to deferred maintenance, there are historic buildings that would need to be preserved. There is infrastructure that will need to be refurbished and so on. So there are significant challenges ahead of us. any monies, would be helpful. It's not for me to say whether the monies would go into, reducing the project size, or will they go into increasing the size of affordable housing, or what, but that's all very hypothetical. I mean, we are working under the diktats of the state law that is passed, and we are responding to that, yeah. So the state has outlined, just to be clear, 3 principal objectives for the site in the state law. Promote housing, including affordable housing and housing for the developmentally disabled. Protect open space around the core campus. So it's a 950-acre campus. Overall, we are dealing with doing development only on a portion, the central portion of that, that's approximately 180 acres in size. So the remaining 700 plus 750 acres outside are preserved as open space. And the third objective is that it needs to be financially feasible, so things happen at the end of the day. And these alternatives are designed to respond to those 3 objectives. And that's what they're seeking to do.
So what you're saying is there's no way to get rid of point number 3 for financially feasible under what the state is asking us to do. But if it gives us an impossible task to come up with a suitable project, can't we push back?
Absolutely. The question is, what's the definition of a suitable project? And I will leave that to the state and the county board of supervisors to determine, because I'm not here sit here and second guess as to what a suitable project means. From our perspective, all 3 of these options are suitable alternatives because they're furthering the state laws that are laid out there. So
excuse me, but they start out with a burden of $100 million of deferred maintenance. That's a huge burden to come up with any suitable project.
Right. So just one thing to keep in mind, is that ultimately the state will dispose of this property to either one developer or several developers. And that burden will ultimately be reflected in the sale price as well. So it isn't like the $100 million is just sort of out there that somebody has to make up for. It's the monies that they will get. If this was a perfect site with the buildings perfectly restored and the state having pumped $100 million in it, the state would expect positive, highly positive monies to accrue to them for the money. Any developer who's going to take upon this site will look at this and go, well, wait, you want me to preserve these buildings? You want me to pump in $30 million into the main building, and you want to do this, that, and that? That'll be reflected in the sale price that the state is able to get. So it isn't like a free lunch or a free pass, for the state. I don't know how much the state will get, but they may not get very much for it at the end of the day, simply because that burden will have to be borne by somebody.
Thank you.
And my understanding that the state is really waiting for the plan in order to, and then there may be funds available both from the state and the federal government. I've made, and I see you nodding your head, so thank you. So I think what's important here is that there are resources available at the state and the federal government to help support the renovation of this site and get it prepared for the future. But at the moment, they're sort of waiting for us to say what it's going to look like. And I think that that's the task in front of us. And that's why it's so important tonight that the city council, having met once, I've had numerous conversations, some of the people seated here tonight and others regarding this site, listened to various town halls, etc., that we, sort of come to a consensus of, in general, of the things that we're hearing, so that the supervisors have a good, a good sense of what would work. And then I think the state will come in, and in reference to Councilmember Felder's comments, I think there will be resources available, but they need to know resources for what. And I think they're really waiting for us. So it's a real chicken or the egg situation right now. I also asked a lot about the possibility of a trust, a living trust for the the state, much like they have at the Presidio Trust. And the answers that I got back were that, well, the federal government can do that because they basically can doing an ongoing apportion, through the federal government. Basically, as the old saying is, they can print the money. Whereas the state has to balance their budget every single year and is unable to assume that same sort of responsibility the federal government might be able to do. And so we're in a different situation. But that doesn't mean the state doesn't have resources and doesn't believe in investing in this site. And I feel fairly confident that they will, as soon as we, and as a community and as the Board of Supervisors, as our elected representatives, tell them what the plan is. And then I think they will be partners with us. But I don't think right now they're not going to write a blank check, as it were. So. Yeah,
and Councilmember, you're right. I mean, the state continues to actually increase revenues and monies and make affordable housing a priority. So there may be monies available from a variety of funds that the state continues to embellish. Within the last year, the state has set up several funds specifically for promoting affordable housing. I also want to add that since the time Brian O made the presentation to you, we had a survey that was out there for the community. That survey closed. We actually just published, I believe, yesterday, the results of the survey. 720 people participated in that survey. So I encourage you to go to the project website, sdcspecificplan.com. You will find the reports on the workshop that we had and the survey we did. So you continue to gain, an understanding of the wider perspectives of people, not all of whom may have come before you or before even the County Board of Supervisors to speak, because we got a lot of input through that. So encourage you to go out there in your own time and look that up.
Very good.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I have kind of the feeling, it's a little bit of pushing, if we look at it, this project, this building has been sitting there in 100 years. And we started this work on this project just only several years. So I think to do things right is more important. Do it quickly. So a lot of the questions, and I don't know how to address. But yeah, we need to take time. But anyway, do you have any other comments right now? Any questions?
I don't have any more questions.
Maybe later on. Yeah.
Yes, please.
All right.
Thank you.
I will open to the public.
Hello, I'm Claire Amkraut. Hello, Council, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council members and city staff. I'm here with a message from the North Sonoma Valley MAC, who I think I heard you at the beginning. They are right now meeting, and I volunteered to come and give you this message. So the first thing is there's a tremendous amount of appreciation for the City Council jumping in and addressing this issue, and the MAC there would welcome the opportunity to collaborate. And obviously they're very sorry they're not here tonight. I wanted to let you know what their agenda is tonight at the MAC meeting. Tracy Salcido is putting together what the community's vision has been for the SDC site. She's going through from 2015 to 2021 and trying to summarize everything. There's going to be a second report on what happened at the 4.5-hour meeting, MAC meeting on 11/17. That will be summarized. John McCall is going to talk about the land trust, about trusts, overview of trusts and land trusts. And then really they're trying to provide input get input for a letter to the Board of Supervisors, including what has had broad community support for the SDC. They're working with a planning professional to develop an alternative that's fleshed out. And they're going to be asking the Board of Supervisors for 2 to 3 months to produce a proposed alternative. There's a real desire to work with someone from the City Hall, everyone or whoever is interested to try and support the city with the letter that is being written from the MAC and integrate the ideas that come from the city, from this meeting and otherwise. And I have the name of the person, who's Arthur Dawson, who's the head of the MAC, and I wanted to give this piece of paper to someone who would, so that we can make some contact between the two groups. So I don't know if I should hand it to you, or if Arthur's also asking whether there's a point person here who he could contact, so you guys could talk together. I think there's a tremendous amount of work going on there with really dedicated people. So I hope it can all get hooked together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, how's it going? My name's, can you guys hear me okay? My name's Derek. You can't hear me. Okay, well, I'll project. My name's Derek Knowles. I'm a nearly 10-year resident of the city of Sonoma, and I'm just here to sort of share some of I guess my feelings about the proposals that have been submitted for the SDC. As a younger person, been particularly interested in what shakes out there, and I think if you speak to most Sonomans, anyone in Sonoma County, it's no surprise that a lot of the three proposed alternatives are wildly unpopular. And I think during a climate crisis, a housing crisis, those proposed alternatives are really missing the mark. I attended a Zoom meeting workshop back in November, and that seemed to be the overwhelming consensus that a fourth alternative was what was desired. In fact, the survey that was made available at the time indicated that over 70% of the people attending that meeting preferred a fourth alternative. And the survey that's been sent out that was just invoked is a little duplicitous because it doesn't really give you an opportunity to comment on alternatives that aren't presented there. So all to say that I think community engagement is what's needed. It sounds like that was what has been described, and I think that there's a clear consensus for a plan that is, again, takes some time to get this right, provides more affordable housing in a community that is, we all know, is sorely lacking it, and does that while also, preserving a wildlife corridor that everyone who lives here is proud of. So I guess submit that and encourage you all to consider a fourth alternative, and something that generations that continue to live here can be proud of. Thank you.
Is it appropriate to hand these out to you now?
Yeah, okay.
I'm Bonnie Brown. I live in the unincorporated area of Sonoma Valley. And what I'm addressing tonight is something I think that hasn't been addressed yet in terms of the planning process, and that is the means of construction. Building new construction is one of the largest means of greenhouse gas emissions. And I know that's something we all have kind of an amorphous idea about, but that can be calculated. Adaptive reuse doesn't do all of that as much. I I think any planning that we need to do, and I'm hoping the city council will put this forward to the county, that is a very important part of this process at SDC. We have a lot of older buildings there, and a lot of the plans put out there are for demolishing most of all the buildings. There are some of the residential buildings in the far southern eastern portion that are in very good condition according to the state report for WRT. And many of the other buildings, can you imagine that the old PEC building, the brick building, as you look to the right of that is the administration building, and then to the right of, in front of that, as you drive up to the PEC brick building, there's that big 2 or 3 story building. Those can all be adaptively reused, and it's not as expensive as demolishing those buildings and building anew in terms of the money to accomplish it, the historical legacy that we can preserve, and also, excuse me, the carbon emissions that demolition and building new creates. And that is addressed in the pamphlet that I just gave out to you. And there are some really inspiring examples of adaptive reuse that are going on in this country. And Europe's been doing it for centuries. They appreciate their history. We have at SDC the history of agriculture, of architecture, from Victorian era through the Kirkbride form of architecture that was used through all the institutions throughout the state of California, and I think other parts of the country also. That's the PEC brick building. And then we have modern, postmodern, 50s and 70s, and then we have the residential buildings, which were on with the tile roofs and cement, more of a Pueblo style with the central courtyard. There's a lot of historic legacy to these places, not only in the structure, but the historic legacy. And I really hope you will read some of this in this brochure and take this to heart, because we need to do adaptive reuse, not build new. It's less expensive, better for history, better for our environment. Our earth is in trouble. We did it. We've got to fix it. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Any more public comments from this room? If no, let me close. And could you check in the Zoom?
We do. We have Martin Will coming on from Zoom.
All right, Martin.
Good evening. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Martin Weil. With my wife, Deirdre, we've been residents in Sonoma for the last 8 years. I'm sorry we missed the December 1 meeting. I would have been interested to hear some of the speakers. We're regular users of the extraordinary system of trails and open spaces at Sonoma Developmental Center. It's very much a gem in the local community. But I'd like to say that I'm also a business person, and I completely understand the need for any plan to be financially viable. I'm not an urban planner at all, but I did go through the consultant's report, and I thought their work was exceptionally thorough, and considering of basically the needs to square the circle. The community, I know I'd attended some of the workshops in the early going, and there was a very clear demand that there be more housing and open space reserved. And I also understood that the state insisted that they not be financially responsible for a very expensive site. And I think the consultants addressed both of those things, and they came up with a plan that has engendered what I seem to sense is an enormous hostility and rejection, which is I'm very sorry about. I'm very appreciative of Council Member Lowe, who, frankly, I'm very glad I voted for you, because you have been the most sensible person on the council this evening about what the way forward is. And I would encourage all of you to not try to change the rules, but try to change Sacramento, because that's probably where the solution is to get any of the local demands met. My biggest fear in all of this, and I'll conclude by saying the last thing we want is to end up with a very large version of the eyesore that exists at Broadway and MacArthur that's been there since long before we moved here. I think that would be a tragedy for the community and an unavoidable outcome. So hopefully cooler heads will prevail and reasonable compromises can be made by all parties. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weil.
Next, we have Dave Ransom.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Ransom.
Oh, he disappeared.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Dave Ransom. I live in Santa Rosa. I go to the Methodist Church in Sonoma and have for almost 10 years now. I'm a member of the Sonoma Valley Housing Group. Thanks for taking this up. As you know, the Sonoma Valley Housing Group supports affordable housing at the SDC, an adequate wildlife corridor, and no hotel or resort. And we'd like to see the SDC campus projects plan for using existing housing for the low income adopted right quick. But we are realists. We know that if this is going to happen, it takes more than the groundswell of support here in Sonoma Valley. We're up against some of the Bay Area's major real estate firms, and there are 5 votes on the Board of Supervisors, not just 1. I believe we have the support of Supervisor Gorin. I don't know about the others, and money talks. Besides that, if we are going to get more time for Permits Sonoma to work up a plan that we can live with, and for the supervisors to go through an educated debate on the issue, then we are probably going to need intervention in Sacramento. That means we need to get the support of our 3 members of the state assembly and our 2 state senators. I say our to include the whole county, not just Sonoma Valley. And I don't think that Mark Levine or Cecilia Aguiar-Corey pay a lot of attention to this tail end of their district, not without some serious noise here. So I want to propose that all of us, the city council and the organizations and individuals in attendance, turn our attention outside the valley, not only to make our own pleas to the powers that be, but to encourage friends and fraternal organizations that we know elsewhere in the county to get educated on the issue and get involved. We in the Sonoma Valley Housing Group have begun that process. Sonoma Valley is a very pleasant little pocket of the world, but if we don't turn our vision outward, it's not going to be our valley much longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ransom.
We don't have any more hands raised, Mr. Mayor, on Zoom.
Thank you. We get back to our council, maybe.
Yeah, thank you. This has all been great, and I appreciate the county explaining the timelines and so forth. And I think we have, it sounds like we have an opportunity to really make an impact on the decision. And it doesn't, from what I hear, it doesn't mean that they're going to have to just choose from one of those 3, and that they would appreciate, from what I've heard, they really are looking forward to our communication to them as helping define this. So I'd like to just start. I'll just throw out a few things and see where we are. And of what I've heard, this is, by no means to be complete, but I have heard loud and clear that it has to be financially sustainable, but a hotel is actually not financially sustainable and not something that meets the needs of the valley in that particular location. And so I'd like to suggest that they look at public-private partners that would be interested in something that would be more of a hub, a global resource and development hub that could be used for now and for future generations, because this property was for the betterment of the people of California, and it needs to continue to be dedicated to something that will benefit California and not something that just benefits a small group of people who, you know, we like them to visit and do all those things, but it's not, this particular site was not developed with that in mind, and it shouldn't change. I'd like to see that, and I believe everyone is in agreement with this, that we respect the corridor, the natural corridor that is there, and that we don't encroach on it at all. And that anything that is developed there is certainly just on the surface that is in front of the surrounding natural corridor. I'm not really saying that as well as I should, I'm sure. The existing footprint. I think it's important that housing and employment be tied together at this site. We can't force people to live near where they work, but we have an opportunity to create something of a campus, and that will make less of an impact on the roads and on the, you know, carbon footprint and so forth. And we have an opportunity to put in some affordable housing that will help our existing workers in California. And we should take that opportunity, but we should also, and I heard the county gentleman say this, we should look at a range, not like there's going to be 2,000 units. We don't know. I mean, it'll all depend on the infrastructure. So we should be comfortable putting in a range that people can start with as we develop the infrastructure, and be aware that it's going to take, I heard 15 years and maybe 20 years before all of this is put together. I'd like to make sure that we have something, we had great speakers tonight about recreation. Lots of people use the site for recreation, continue to make that site even better for recreation. We need more of that. And, you know, so I'll start with that and see, you know, so no hotel, something that benefits the state of California, research development that has to do with climate, appreciate the heritage and the architecture, you know, protect the wildlands, and, you know, try to produce a campus-like setting where we could have housing and workers together. I think that's something that people can accept, and you know, people can fine-tune it, whatever. But I'll just start with those. I have other notes as well. But Mr. Mayor, thank you for letting me begin.
Thank you. We are waiting for your more ideas.
Oh, you know, I'd let somebody else
Yeah.
start. I could go on forever on this thing. I love.
Felder.
I
Yes.
honestly could.
I certainly support almost everything that Councilwoman Lowe has put forth. I think those are very valid things to consider, and I would like to see us develop a list of the key aspects that we want to see go into this development, and certainly this was a good start that you presented. And at least we can try to get what we feel are the key items that have to go into this development. One of the things that I've heard from one of our speakers from the public this evening, and I certainly endorse, is the idea of adaptive reuse. It is imperative of us to be environmentally responsible. And if we have the opportunity through adaptive reuse to save buildings, both for historical and just for the fact that other buildings are potentially able to be renovated without being demolished, I am all for that, and I would like to make that one of the key points that we move forward with is adaptive reuse. And I'll save more comments for later.
Wonderful. Vice Mayor Barnett.
Thank you, Mayor Ding. I too agree with a lot of what has been said. I liked a lot of what Councilwoman Lowe had to say. I also love adaptive reuse, always have, and so I would support that and also include that in any letter we send to the Board of Supervisors. The one concern I have, and I would like to sort of speak a little further about it, is I agree, I don't think a hotel should be the primary commercial component of this project. But for example, if there's a vision out there for, an innovation center, or perhaps some sort of, offices, that might serve high tech or medical or some sort of education center there, sometimes like smaller hotels or maybe, boutique hotels sort of also serve those uses as well. For example, the Presidio Trust, which we referenced at our last meeting, that I think everyone loves how they've redone the Presidio. I believe they have 2 small hotels on there, in addition to all the office space, the Letterman complex, all the adaptive reuse there in terms of housing. And so I'm curious what you think about, maybe putting in there, we don't believe a hotel or hospitality should be the primary commercial driver of this, but I would be worried about just a blanket no small hotel.
I think I'd be. I think the concern I have about the hotel is not so much about the, because I like hotels. I mean, I stay in hotels all the time. I travel, I work, and I understand their function and so forth. It's the employment factor and not being able to support the economy of the workers, and that we need to create a better economic engine for that site. It's and something that our kids in school can aspire to want to work at, and that's why I focus more on research and development than on hospitality.
I agree. Yeah.
And but I will say that I think it's important. I just spent Saturday night at Asilomar, which is, if any of you have ever been to this beautiful place, it is a state-owned conference grounds, very respectful of the environment and so forth, and Julia Morgan architecture. It's an incredible place. And it's a place where you could have small conferences that, could serve the community, academic conferences, retreats, and so forth. So I see that sort of level, I think, would work very nicely. And it would also, allow people to come in and, hike and do those things. I just don't think we want to do the kind of commercial hotel where people are just, driving in, driving out, catching buses to go wine tasting. It's going to be very disruptive. It'd be something where people could come in and study and do their planning and that sort of thing. I think that sort of matches more, very much like what Asilomar does. And there's a need for that. I get asked all the time when people say, we've got a group of people, we're coming in to do our monthly or annual meeting, and they're looking for, retreat style place, so I think there's a compromise there somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. I've also stayed at Asilomar, and I think, and I know you can have weddings there, and they have other sort of elements there, but I agree. I think something like that would work perfectly here. And so I'm wondering if there's a way we could not, ask the board and the state not to focus on hospitality uses here. I just want to be concerned about the language on completely precluding them.
Right. Small scale, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I totally agree, all of you. And what is more is for me, and when they just started this project 5 or 6 years ago, I got the surprise. I was so expecting. I said, wow, that is and we turn over a new page. Sometimes when I go up to Santa Rosa to my second office, usually I go around the Highway 12. But sometimes I just pass by, went to the Arnold Drive. I will look at what is the future look like, what I need. Unfortunately, right now, the three alternatives, none of them is my expectation. But anyway, this is mine, not personal. And when we thinking about the financial feasibilities, that is right. Yeah, we live and work in this material world. We shouldn't consider. However, when we look at it in the deep, how much bonds, how much loans we borrow from our future generations, huge. So even those kind of kids having a bond, they already got a debt, $50,000. That is not a fit for them. So I don't like right now the people using financial not a feasibility, and then we don't like. We should do that. What is the most valuable stuff in our valley, in here is the land. We should leave the more open space for the future generation. We cannot compromise their interests because we already did a lot of a bad thing. We borrowed the money. We borrowed from future. Who will pay back? These kind of young people. So the minor approach is leave the more open spaces. Leave over there, and then let our younger generation, they are smarter than us, made a decision how to use it. Don't abuse it. And that is true. I believe that because I'm the advocate for the UGBs and open spaces. I totally appreciate this kind of philosophy. We can increase density a little bit and leave the more space. Anyway, I agree, all of you. You're on great points.
Yeah, and I really appreciate what you had to say, Mayor Ding, because I don't think anything that goes there, I think the absolute litmus test for anything that goes there is that it has to preserve the natural environment. And that if it's any negative impact on the natural environment, then, it should not be adopted. So I really appreciate what you had to say because there's a lot of good ideas out there. And the main thing is we have a very pristine environment that we want to maintain. So whatever we do has to keep that in mind. I think that's well said.
Vice Mayor Barnett, no more.
I guess another thing we should probably mention, although at this point I guess I don't know, obviously the decision is up to the state, but I know that members of the community are asking for more time. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we, or even the Board of Supervisors, has the ability to grant more time, but to the extent that it's important, I think we should probably also mention that as well.
I think that's a brilliant statement because I think we have to get it right.
Right.
And I think that it's more important to get it right than to get it on time. Right. So I think that I support putting that in the letter. But I was a little bit surprised and happy to hear tonight that that feels like there's a lot more flexibility than I was originally led to believe. So, but that being said, it wouldn't hurt to put it in there just in case.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we need a time. Doing the right thing is more important. Do it do it quickly. Yeah. And I have another question. If any chance for us to find another, consulting company or service company, find a different, the design for the future, because these kind of three alternatives came from the same architect firm, maybe we can find another, architect company, see if they have any new idea, forwarding, the vision or something like that. And then we can open our eyes, give us the more options.
Well, I'd suggest taking a look at some of the Eldridge Enterprise documents that if you haven't seen them, I'm happy to share them. I received one on email, and my email, I have like 6 emails, so I don't know if it went to my Sonoma City email, but I'm happy to share anyway. It's a public document that they've been doing a lot of what you're describing. They've been studying this. They're economists, they're biologists, they're associated with our ecology center. I know they have some, and I think Supervisor Gorin introduced me originally to them. So I think that was a great call on her part. But I'm happy to share some of that because I think a lot of people have done a lot of research. It's just a matter of putting it together and sharing it with everyone and other people. I mean, you brought some information tonight, which was wonderful. You know, I bet. So I don't know. I think we have a lot of great ideas. I think at this point, if we give them the general architecture, if they think they need to hire other people to flush it out, I think that would be the way to go at this point, because that's just a suggestion.
I have a question, staff. It sounds like we have a very considerable amount of consensus up here on the kinds of things that we would like to put in a letter. Do you feel that you're getting enough direction that you could craft a letter from this council?
Yeah, I think I do. I guess the question for the council would be, if I heard the county staff right, January 25th is another meeting. So theoretically, you could see what staff writes up at your January 19th meeting and add to it or modify it then at that time if you wanted to.
Sure. Yeah. That sounds great.
As long as we're sure that we don't miss a deadline to get it into the county, that's all.
So we can confirm with county staff.
Yeah, if we have the opportunity to take a peek at it and still get it to them in a timely fashion, I agree.
Okay. So maybe that's a question Ross or Rajiv can answer.
That'd be great. Are they still on?
Trying to unmute there. Sorry about that. Yes, the Board of Supervisors will be considering the alternatives on January 25th, and I think that timing that Mr. Toy mentioned would give us enough time to, review that comment letter and get it into our presentation.
That's great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yes, and I like your suggestion, Mr. City Manager, to bring it back, because especially in light of the MAC meeting tonight, I want to be very respectful of any input they may have to that. So that would help.
Another thing I would also like to add to the letter is just bring up to discuss. In terms of moving forward with the EIR, I think it's really important that any traffic analysis or any sort of analysis really hone in on the potential impacts to the city of Sonoma. Obviously, any potential plan here will have significant impacts on our infrastructure, on Arnold Drive, on Highway 12, and obviously we are hosting these forums because we are one community in this valley, but specifically when it comes to the city of Sonoma, I would like to know potential infrastructure impacts as part of the EIR process.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask one of the speakers from the county a question?
Sure, Mr. Walker.
Thank you. Rajiv, I believe you mentioned that there's a state law that dictates the criteria that the plans must meet. Is there any way that state law could be copied and scanned or sent to the city and my office?
Yeah, absolutely. The website that I mentioned where the documents are listed in the chat also has under background documents the Sonoma Developmental Center Planning State Law. So if you click on that link in there, it takes you right there to it.
That should be fine.
So SDCSpecificPlan.com, if you go there, on the top right-hand side, you'll see documents. If you click on that, it'll take you to a place where you can find both the survey report as well as the planning state law.
And that's SDC
specificplan.com. And if you want to go to the state's website, it's Government Code section 14670.10.5.
Could you give me that number again?
Yeah, 14670.10.5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I ask a
Sure.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Definitely.
When is the projected time you'll do the scoping meeting for the EIR? I can't remember what you said.
we haven't released the NOP, so that'll be part of the NOP, and the NOP meaning the notice of preparation for the EIR. We are hoping to issue that in sometime in January, so we haven't set a scoping meeting, but the scoping meeting will have to be within 30 days of the NOP going out, yeah.
Okay, so the council also has another opportunity when they issue the
Absolutely,
NOP to
because
comment.
I noticed that in a previous letter that came in from, I'm sorry, don't recall if it was from the city manager or was it from the council, you had requested VMT analysis or something like that. So certainly at the time, when the EIR scoping notice goes out, matters like that can certainly be, requested.
Good.
Dave, excuse me, Mayor. Dave is raise a hand.
Mr. Mayor, David Storr, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you for the explanation. I'm a little confused. I was wondering if you can help me understand the process here. I'm not sure how you can do an NOP when a project has not been described as in the specific plan itself. So can you help me understand first the preparation of a specific plan once the board gives you direction on where it wants to go, and how you can do an NOP before you even know what the specific plan is going to be, let alone being created and released to the public? Thank you.
Right. So a specific plan is a plan. It's sort of like in some ways, like a general plan or something like that. You often do an NOP under state law. Under CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, you should release the notice of preparation, really as soon as you know that an EIR will be necessary. So because this is not a specific building project, it's not like a shopping center. We know exactly how many square feet will be in there. The NOP will reference the basic direction that the specific plan will establish. And we do have a vision and guiding principles that are developed by our planning advisory team that are seconded by the County Board of Supervisors. Those provide a specific direction. We've been working on alternatives, so we are sort of narrowing our choices a little bit. So we generally know the kinds of land uses that will be here. I mean, the state law tells us that housing is a priority. So we have a general direction in terms of what we are anticipating development to be. We know where the development will go. It'll be on the core area of the campus. The surrounding areas will be preserved as open space. So we have a fair amount of information to proceed with a notice of preparation. Without knowing, specifically how many number of housing units or how many rooms the hotel will have or not have, we'll have a general description of where the plan is headed, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. And you and I know, Rajiv, that a specific plan is something less than a general plan, but more than zoning. So are you saying then that the specific plan will not prescribe zoning or some form of specific land uses?
Oh, no. It will do that, but let me explain that. One of the reasons why we want to do a notice of preparation now is that the purpose of a notice of preparation is to enable state agencies, responsible agencies, people, common people who may have knowledge, may have information, may have things that they want to see or see addressed, be reflected in response to the notice of preparation. And so as we develop the specific plan and we do the AR in parallel, we have a way to ensure that we develop a plan that's fully integrated with environmental concerns. So that is the reason why we welcome input now. So if the city of Sonoma, I heard you say some specific things about your interest in seeing something that's part of an EIR, if we know that, it's better for us as things are fleshed out to know that before things are fully, fleshed out in terms of specifics. Yeah.
And then thank you for that, Rajiv. And then one last question relating to the actual preparation of the specific plan. So if they're done in tandem, you could be well on your way on a CEQA document, an EIR in this case, but your project may change as you prepare the specific plan. So how's that going to work if there are pretty significant changes in the specific plan?
Yeah, let's be clear on what the definition of project is. A project is a plan in this case, so it'll be a program EIR as opposed to a project EIR. So the fundamental objectives are laid out, in state law. We have vision and guiding principles, and those will not change. So, some things may get adjusted. We may have biologists, for example, look more deeply into, what kinds of impacts might result, and they may come back and say we need, more setbacks from creeks, or light is going to be an issue for certain species, and so on, and that'll be reflected, in the plan. But that's not going to change the overall project description, so to say.
And the timing of the specific plan, Rajiv, I'm sorry, was that?
Yeah, so it's going to be sometime in early summer. We are anticipating June for both documents, the draft specific plan and the draft EIR.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Dave. If any more questions, or okay. All right. Yeah. Although we are not decision maker, but we very much appreciate tonight's opportunity. So we see state and the county, they allowed us to address the more and comments, good ideas. It's very encouraging. And for us, we should very much appreciate this opportunity. And also, we needed to do our homework together and take the time and then getting into the better. Current project is good, but we can do much better. And then move forward. Mr. Toy, do we have any, the motion needed to?
No, I think the direction is we have your comments, we'll put something together, and then January 19th you'll have the opportunity to see
January
that. It won't be a workshop, we'll schedule as a regular item. Sounds like you might have comments from the MAC or whoever, and sometimes the easiest thing to do at that time, you could just take their comments and attach it to your comments and then send it off if that's what you wanted to do.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Toy. So anything else? Felder? Okay. Oh. Rajiv, you want to say something?
Yeah. Oh, no, I was simply going to say, well, I was not raising my hand to speak. I was just waving.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. I totally encourage you to, go to the website. Please do read the survey report. Even though you will not be looking at the letter for a while, because it does capture nuances from a wider spectrum of people and not just those who may have come to specific meetings. So I do encourage you, to look at that, because there are a variety of perspectives. I don't think there is one uniform, voice out there. There are multiple voices in here with a variety of interests that they have. I encourage you to understand the subtleties of it all and understand everyone's needs as you, look through and try to do the right thing. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you. And also, I would like to, to see if you have any new funding resource, whatever. Yeah, right now it's a good time for us to find out everywhere, either state level, even the federal level, and the people are looking at us. They want to give us a hand. We cannot lose this chance. Thank you, Rajiv. Bye. All right.
Mr. Mayor, can we take a short break before the next?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Great, yeah. We have a short break, the 5 minutes. It's okay. Thank you. Going to agenda number 6.2. Discuss, consider, and take possible action on introduction and adoption of an urgency ordinance amending Sonoma Municipal to add sections 19041 related to ministry residential projects in residential zoning district and section 19.72 related to ministerial parcel maps for urban lot with a section 21000 of Public Resources Code, Planning and the Community Service Director and as planner will give us. Mr. Toy, please, yeah.
Hi, I will be giving the presentation this evening. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. As the mayor just spoke, we are here tonight to discuss an urgency ordinance to address Senate Bill 9, which is the California Housing Opportunity and More Efficiency Home Act. This is a new state regulation that goes into effect on January 1st. It was signed by the governor on September 16th, so it's been quite a scramble to get here, and would like to take an opportunity to thank all the members of the community, our planning commission, and our zoning ad hoc for getting us where we are today. It's been a very elaborate public engagement process. We've had 3 planning commission meetings, and look forward to presenting our urgency ordinance to you today. So SB 9 has 3 sections. Section 1 details how to add more units to a property. Section 2 outlines how to subdivide an existing property into 2 lots. Section 3 outlines extensions and moratoriums. We won't go into that this evening. So we're dealing with 2 topics: adding more units to an existing lot without splitting the lot, and then the scenario where we would be splitting an existing legal lot of record into 2 parcels and adding units on both. So Senate Bill 9 outlines that a local agency may adopt an ordinance to implement the provisions of SB 9, and that's what we are here tonight to do. As I mentioned, SB 9 was signed on September 16th, 2021. Very shortly after that, the City Council assigned council members Kelso Barnett and Bob Felder to the Development Code Ad Hoc Subcommittee. And under their direction, staff has been preparing an urgency ordinance with the intent that it would go into effect prior to SB 9 being effective on January 1st. So the city is electing to establish our own objective standards through this urgency ordinance, and they would go into effect immediately. The urgency ordinance would be in place until a regular or permanent ordinance replaces it. And our intent is to follow up fairly shortly with a permanent ordinance and another thorough public engagement process to refine the language in this urgency ordinance. As I mentioned, we have had quite a large amount of public outreach, especially given that this is an urgency ordinance. Typically, an urgency ordinance would bypass the Planning Commission and come straight to City Council. We elected to use every opportunity that we had between October 4th, when the ad hoc was established, and today, which is the last City Council before the end of the year, to try to share the development of this ordinance with the public and stakeholders. This included a Planning Commission study session on October 14th. We had a joint City Council, Planning Commission, Design Review and Historic Preservation Commission meeting on SB 9 and other legislation coming down from the state with our city attorney and members of the firm on October 20th. 2021, and that was more of an informational overview of the laws and how they might pertain to the city. We had a study session on draft objective design standards before the Planning Commission on November 18th, and a study session on December 2nd on the draft urgency ordinance. The urgency ordinance that is before the council this evening incorporates the comments from the Planning Commission and members of the public from December 2nd. And with each of these meetings, we noticed the meeting in the paper, on the city website. We had our legal postings at City Hall, and additional outreach on our traditional modes, including Facebook, KSBY. Huge thank you to KSBY for continually helping us to spread the word about the ongoing initiatives at the city. And again, in an effort for transparency, we aren't required by law to advertise study sessions, but we wanted to do our job to make sure we outreached as much of the community as possible. So SB 9 requires that the city ministerially approve a 2-unit housing development project for 2 homes on a single-family parcel, and also requires that the city approve an urban lot split, which is a one-time subdivision of an existing single-family residential parcel into 2 parcels. And for those of you who haven't heard the term ministerial before, I know the council members have, but for members of the public, a ministerial approval is akin to a building permit or another permit that does not require discretion or judgment. So any of our permits that go before the Planning Commission would be discretionary. A permit that just is approved by our building officials is ministerial. And so this essentially allows housing development projects to bypass a round of discretionary review, which can save some time. So SB 9 states that the city approval can only be based on objective standards. An objective standard is clear, defined metrics, and our current code has things like should, may, and what we are looking for is shall be 500 square feet. Very prescriptive and clear for everyone to understand. So the approvals can only be based on objective standards, and also they cannot preclude the construction of 2 units that are at least 800 square feet. So you're going to see this number 800 square feet later on in the presentation, and it comes up in the draft ordinance. And this is where it comes from, is SB 9 requires, it allows the city the opportunity to establish our own objective standards, but we can't take it so far that a resident can't get 2 800 square foot units. And a denial is only permitted if projects don't meet the objective standards or if there are specific adverse impacts on public health and safety. SB 9 also has limitations on how jurisdictions regulate SB 9 projects, including setbacks, parking requirements, and requirements that attached buildings must be allowed. So SB 9 is very specific about which parcels are affected by SB 9. So in all single-family residential zoned properties within urbanized areas, you can use SB 9, except environmentally sensitive areas, environmental hazard areas, including high fire hazard severity zones, prime farmland, wetland. This list of sensitive areas is common to several of our housing laws. And so in these sensitive areas, you cannot use SB 9. Most applicable to the city of Sonoma are you cannot use SB 9 where historic properties and historic districts are involved, and also properties where the Ellis Act was used to evict tenants in the last 15 years. Additionally, demolition is generally not permitted for rental units or deed restricted units. And the real essence of SB 9 is trying to promote additional housing, additional density in single family residential zones, but it stops short of evicting and kicking out existing tenants. And there are quite a bit of protections to make sure that doesn't happen. So under our current law, current zoning code, a single family zoned property is allowed 3 units. So 1 primary residential unit, 1 accessory dwelling unit, and 1 junior accessory dwelling unit. And accessory dwelling unit and junior accessory dwelling units have very specific definitions about sizes, setbacks, things like that that are governed by state law as well. So currently, a single family zoned property can have 3 housing units. So what can be built? Lots not being subdivided. So for this case is where we have an existing legal lot of record. So my house, mayor's house, vice mayor's house, and we want to add additional units without subdividing it and selling part of the property off. So for a vacant lot, SB 9 allows 2 primary dwelling units to be constructed. For a lot with an existing single-family home, like mine, I would be able to add 1 additional primary dwelling unit. And there's a little bit of wiggle room, and I can have our city attorney chime in, but there's some interpretation that 2 new units could be allowed beyond the existing unit. And the law is not specific on how ADUs and JADUs might apply under SB 9. Just to comment, in reviewing the legislative history leading up to SB 9, there's quite a bit of back and forth amongst various legislators that seem to indicate that 2 units was sort of the maximum conceived per parcel, or 2 units per urban lot splitted parcel. So for a total of 4. There's some who have argued, well, you could put a new duplex on a residential parcel that already has a single family home. We don't think that the legislative history bears that out or supports that interpretation. So our view is that the maximum you can get on a residentially zoned lot that is urban lot splitted would be 4. If there's no lot split involved, you get 2. And if there are already 2 units on that residential lot, you don't get any more. That would include an ADU. So if you have a home and you have an accessory dwelling unit already on that parcel, that's it. You don't get any more. This ordinance is before you specifically states that ADUs and JADUs are not allowed through the SB 9 ministerial process. That doesn't mean they're precluded, because if you want to go through the normal ADU, JADU process, which is also relatively expedited and ministerial in its own right, you can develop whatever the ADU you wish to have on a single family home residentially zoned lot. But under the ordinance before you tonight, ADUs and JADUs are not an allowed use of property utilizing the ministerial process that's set forth in the ordinance that's before you. Thank you. So just to go back to our city attorney's comments, so on a lot, again, this is a lot not being subdivided. So you could have 1 existing. Yeah, we don't, this is not correct. Yeah, I'm going to skip that. So we just discussed a case where we have a lot that's not being split, and now I'm going to go over the portion of the law outlining an urban lot split. So we have an existing lot in our residentially zoned areas, and the applicant wishes to do a parcel map to split it. So homeowners can build 2 homes on each of the 2 new lots for a total of 4 units, and that's what the city attorney was just mentioning. So if there's existing units, new homes can be added up to 4 potential units. And again, this is repeating, but the ADUs could be permitted through our separate ADU process, which we went through a very similar process. We had an urgency ADU ordinance and was followed up by a regular ADU ordinance. This was it February, I think. So homes are subject to the objective rules that are outlined in this urgency ordinance, as long as the rules do not preclude 2 800 square foot units on each property. And this is at the essence of SB 9. So
for a lot that's being subdivided, so an empty lot could be split into 2 lots with 2 homes on each lot for a total of 4. Or if it's a lot with an existing single-family residence that you want to split, the lot with the existing house could have 1 additional unit, and the new lot could have 2. So if you remember earlier, currently under our regulations, we could have 3. So and this is a little bit more restrictive, but it's a primary unit, not an accessory dwelling unit, and there are specifics as to what those land uses entail and what needs to go along with them. So the biggest difference between a primary unit and an accessory dwelling unit is going to be the independent sewer and water. So in the term single family zone is really a reference to R1 zoning, which does not exist in the city of Sonoma. We have various residential zoning districts, and after review with our city attorney, there are 4 districts that SB 9 would apply to. We have our residential hillside zoning district, our rural residential zoning district, our low density residential zoning district, and our residential Sonoma zoning district. So these are the only 4 zoning districts where SB 9 applies. So it does not apply to our commercial zoning district, mixed use, and there are a few residential, so medium density residential, it does not apply, as well as high density. So there was a report put out by the Turner Center that analyzed SB 9 to try to figure out what was the potential impact in California. And what their analysis came up with is based on some very general assumptions that approximately 5.4% of parcels would be able to use SB 9. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why somebody might want to use SB 9 and might not. But first, we're going to go through which zoning districts does it apply in, and are any of them located in the exclusion areas where SB 9 cannot be used? And then there are certain physical characteristics that prevent SB 9 from being used. So our estimate based on that Turner Center study is that in the city of Sonoma, based on the total number of parcels that we have, so we have 19 parcels in the hillside zoning district, 2,116 in low density residential, 60 in rural residential, and 230 in residential Sonoma. So that's how many parcels we have in the city of Sonoma. So based on the Turner Center analysis, about 131 parcels could potentially use SB 9. Out of those 131, we're not sure how many of those would want to use this process and would move forward. So to address the urban lot splits, our current Sonoma Municipal Code requires subdivisions of less than 5 units and divisions of land into 2, 3, and 4 parcels to obtain a tentative parcel map, which requires approval by the Planning Commission at a public hearing. So our current process, if somebody wanted to do that lot split, they submit an application, the city processes it, we go through CEQA review, and it goes to a public hearing. SB 9 requires the approval of up to 2 units, subject to only the objective standards that would permit those 2 600 square foot units. 800, did I say 600? Sorry. Yeah. 800 square foot units per lot in a single family zone, and allow for the division of 1 existing lot into 2 lots of at least 1,200 square feet ministerially. So that would bypass the Planning Commission. And that would really speed up the process, and as long as they meet the certain requirements and conditions. SB 9 establishes a ministerial review process, which means that these projects are not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. So currently for a tentative parcel map, we go through the categorical exemptions, and an applicant is required to provide certain technical studies to demonstrate that there would be no environmental impact as a result of the project. That's reviewed by the Planning Commission and is part of the project approval. SB 9 skips that process. And this is an overview to compare what our current process is with under SB 9. So on the left-hand side, we have discretionary PC and city council. And so our typical process for lots of 1 to 4 is we have a tentative parcel map that's reviewed by the planning department. It goes to hearing, and then it is finalized by our city engineer, which requires another hearing before city council. And with our ministerial process, instead of the tentative parcel map, the applicant would go straight to submitting a parcel map to the city engineer and then to the final map. So it's a lot of information to say that what is before you is an urgency ordinance that we are hoping to adopt before SB 9 is enacted. And what we have done is go through our existing zoning code. We've gone through the requirements of SB 9 and worked with our zoning code ad hoc, staff, and key stakeholders in the community to come up with a list of objective standards that would work in the city of Sonoma for SB 9 projects. So some of the key highlights of our urgency ordinance is that we have a minimum and maximum of 800 square feet in size. It outlines the applicable zoning districts. The recommendation is to limit these 800 square foot units to 1 story unless the only way they can get 800 square feet on a lot is to have 2 stories. So in that case, they would be allowed to do that. The maximum height for 1 story is 18 feet. And the maximum height, if indeed a 2-story unit is required, is 25 feet. The ordinance states that there are no flag lots for lot splits. And a flag lot is essentially if you have, it would kind of look like it describes what it looks like. It looks like a flag, and so it's sort of an irregularly shaped parcel that has a really skinny, narrow portion sticking down for a driveway or other access way. And that lot area for a flag lot counts towards floor area ratio and site coverage. And essentially, when you are processing a flag lot, it's a more complicated process. The whole intent of SB 9, one of the requirements is that the property is owned and intended to be developed by an individual homeowner. You have to sign an affidavit that you intend to live there for 3 years. So our lens is really different. This isn't your typical developer. It's the intent is that it's going to be kind of a mom and pop developer. And so this requirement for the flag lot is to really help streamline the process so that the parcel is regularly shaped and that it will provide realistic expectations up front as to what can be developed and what it needs to look like to meet our ministerial process. In addition, we have outlined all of our existing objective standards. And again, this is really part of this urgency ordinance. It's an educational tool to try to help homeowners. We're taking all these sections of our code that are in various chapters and trying to put them all in one place. So our audience is just very different, and we want to try to streamline it and package it up so that it is as easily digestible as possible. So some of our existing objective standards are our creekside development standards. So if you are within 30 feet of Nathanson Creek or Friar Creek, for example, you cannot build any structures. For Sonoma Creek, it's 50 feet from the top of bank. Our parking standard is 1 covered parking space per unit for a single-family residence. And we also have objective standards for site coverage, floor area ratio, and we have open space requirements per each unit to have livable outdoor space. We're living in California, and that's one of the reasons we are all here. We also have requirements for our water efficient landscape ordinance, our screening and buffering criteria, and standards for fences, hedges, and walls, how tall they can be in different locations, and what they can look like. May
I interrupt? I apologize.
Yeah.
This might be a good time to talk about, if you don't have it in your slides later on, the issue of waiving objective standards. Do you talk about that later or not?
I don't think so.
This might be a good opportunity to talk about that since these are up on the screen for you. The law also provides that if the application of an objective standard physically precludes the development of one or both of the proposed units to at least 800 feet in square feet size, that objective standard needs to be waived. You can see there's 4 bullet points of objective standards here. For example, the Creekside Development Standard, the setback standard, may in fact squeeze so much of the square footage out of the available developable site that you won't be able, as a property owner, to construct 2 at least 800 square foot units on that property. That would mean then that setback requirement would have to be waived or modified to allow that to happen. Our ordinance actually says that's waived only to the extent necessary to allow at least 800 square feet of floor area per unit. But this is an example of the kind of objective standard that SB 9 says must be modified to allow the units that are being applied for. Thank you, Christina.
Yeah, and the final kind of key point on this slide is a requirement to deed restrict these homes for affordable housing. The whole push of SB 9 is to create affordable housing, and by limiting it to 800 square feet and also deed restricting it, it is ensuring that these units would be provided in perpetuity as affordable housing. It would assist the city with meeting our RENA numbers as we go through our housing element update. And it would also prohibit an applicant from developing these 2 units and then later on making modifications that would potentially combine like an attached duplex from into one single family home. So for example, if we had 2 attached 1,400 square foot units, and 5 years down the line, somebody wanted to buy both and convert it into a 2,800 square foot house, that deed restriction would prohibit that. Just to give you a little bit of background behind the thought process that the ad hoc committee went through. The minimum and maximum 800 square feet was derived based on the SB 9 minimum of 800 square feet. So the law guarantees 2 units of 800 square feet. So if we have 2 800 square foot units, that's 1,600 square feet. SB 9 also establishes a minimum lot size of 1,200 square feet. And then once you add in the space for 1 parking space and 1 open space, our open space requirements, the 2 800 square foot units was sort of an appropriate estimate for what would be developable on a minimum size lot. The exercise that we went through for the applicable zoning districts was to look at where single family residences are allowed, and I'll ask the city attorney if he wants to chime in to that a little bit further.
Certainly. The Association of Bay Area Governments has developed a frequently asked question sheet that helps us determine what kind of zoning districts are subject to SB 9. And let me read you the excerpt there is from the FAQ. The question is, can you use SB 9 in zones that allow single-family development but are zoned primarily for multifamily or mixed-use development? The answer is no. The language of the statute is clear that it applies only to parcels in single-family residential zones. It would not serve the purposes of the legislation for it to apply in areas where multifamily or denser uses are already permitted. SB 9 also does not apply to a parcel that is currently developed with a single-family home if that parcel is located in anything other than a single-family residential zone. So there's several residential zones in our code, but when you read the description of them and their purposes, you'll see that the purpose is for multifamily. Those were excluded, and rightfully so. The 4 that we have included have as their primary purpose single-family residential structures, and those are included.
Thank you. So the next issue that I wanted to discuss is the 1-story and 18-foot height maximum height limit. our typical property in the city of Sonoma that we used as our example at the ad hoc and at the Planning Commission for coming up with these assumptions. Our standard lot, we're talking about low density residential. It's about between 6,000 square feet, 7,500 square feet. It's developed with a single family residence that is set back between 15 and 20 feet from the front property line. So the majority of these units are going to be located behind an existing single family residence and surrounded on 3 sides with existing single family residence. So that's really the scenario that we were approaching this with. We have processes in place for an applicant who does not want to meet these standards. They can go through design review, they can get a use permit to do a duplex. And so we were really looking at what's going to be most appropriate for our existing communities and neighborhoods and what can be built in these typical scenarios in a reasonable manner. And so a 1-story building would, given the 800 square foot size, felt more appropriate as far as mass and bulk goes. And we consulted with local architects, and based on our average single family home in Sonoma, our 18-foot maximum height limit was what was agreed upon by Planning Commission and our ad hoc. And the intent is to prohibit excessively high ceilings, excess mass and bulk, and that's, partially to provide relief to neighbors, but it's also to help keep these units affordable. Large 15-foot ceilings plus, more than that is really a luxury feature. And so by keeping the overall height down, it also keeps the price of the home more reasonable. And again, we can do 2 stories through our regular process, and if that's so desired by the homeowner. So the focus is really 1 story, 18 square feet, unless you can't get those 2 800 square foot units. And then in that case, you could do 2 story and 25 feet. And I think I touched on the flag lots a little bit, and it's really intended to help these local developers who probably are not familiar with the process and not creating obstacles down the line. If we get the parcel map approved, we want these units to come to fruition. We don't want to create parcels that are challenging to develop on. We wanted to utilize our existing objective language as much as possible. The zoning code has been on the books for many, many years and has worked successfully to create a community that we all know and love. And so we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, wanted to rely as much as possible on our existing language. And the thought process on the deed restricted housing, I touched on a little bit, but really to help the city's RENA numbers, deed restrict these units as affordable in perpetuity, and also prohibit these smaller affordable units developed through SB 9 from being converted into a larger unaffordable residence later on. So I mentioned the Turner Center analysis previously, and their analysis is that the new homes created under SB 9 is likely to be a very modest and gradual impact to most communities. And the study stated that SB 9's primary impact will be to unlock incrementally more units on parcels that are already financially feasible under existing law, typically through simple subdivision of an existing structure. Relatively few new single-family parcels are expected to become financially feasible for added units as a direct consequence of this bill. And as I mentioned earlier, the SB 9 units can be counted towards our RENA numbers, and that is the regional housing needs allocation that is established for each jurisdiction. We have our 6th cycle coming up, and we're going to have to figure out how to plan and be held accountable for these additional units. And so doing the deed restriction is going to help the city in that aspect. In the future, it will be based on actual trends, but there's no time to establish a pattern for this housing element. And we have guidance coming out from HCD in the coming months. So our next steps are to move this urgency ordinance forward. It would be effective immediately, so January 1, it would be in effect when SB 9 goes into effect. City Hall is closed from Christmas to New Year's, so this is, one of our last opportunities to make this change before it goes into effect. And then we would begin working on our regular ordinance. It's currently tentatively scheduled to go before the Planning Commission on February 10th. And then the City Council would introduce the ordinance on March 2nd, followed up with the adoption on March 16th. And then the ordinance would go into effect 30 days later, April 15th. And I think this timeline really highlights the need for the urgency ordinance. So the timeline, it's essentially 4 to 5 months for staff to work an ordinance through the process. And this is based on us already having an ordinance that's ready to go because we've been working on it since October. And if we don't adopt the urgency ordinance, then we wouldn't have anything on the books until April or May. And that is the end of my presentation. Are there questions?
Thank you, Christina. Very detailed, concise. Any questions, both of you? We are lucky you have ad hoc members.
I have a couple questions. My first question is for the city attorney, Mr. Walter. There's been some concern that this doesn't rise to the level that requires an urgency ordinance. Can you, in your opinion, is it legally possible to move forward with an urgency ordinance? Specifically, there's concern that per California Government Code for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, or safety, etc. I know other cities throughout the state are doing this. I know that generally urgency ordinances are fairly common. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yes, there are a number of cities throughout the state who are adopting urgency ordinances addressing SB 9 as we speak. The urgency stems from the fact that the state legislature did not pass and cause the bill to become effective until September, which gives cities a short period of time, 3 months, to develop an ordinance and process it through the normal procedures, which require a hearing before the Planning Commission and 2 hearings before the Council, and then a 30-day wait period before it becomes effective. So that would mean, if we follow that procedure, that'd be at least a month or 2 in January and February of next year where we would have no ordinance. And that would then potentially allow applicants to come forward and get ministerial approvals of projects that would in fact fly in the face of existing standards as well as those that we deemed appropriate for this kind of a project. So it, in my view, that clearly impacts the welfare and the health of the community, because that is the entire point of planning and zoning, is to enhance the health and the welfare of the community. That's why we have zoning, to make the development of our communities consistent with our visions. And this would allow, if we didn't have the urgency ordinance, potentially development to occur that would be in violation of the vision of the city, its general plan, and other planning doctrines. So I think it's sufficient. We have actually adopted other urgency ordinances. This council has, based on almost the same set of facts, i.e. the state waits until September, October, November to pass something that goes into effect 40 or 50 days later, and the city simply is just running to try to develop something to address the exigencies of the new legislation. And if we do and follow the normal process, we would not have time. So I'm fairly confident the urgency ordinance would withstand attack. Even if it wouldn't, we are belts and suspendering this process by, as Ms. Attorney has indicated, coming back to the commission in early 2022 to develop perhaps a more thoughtful, or at least thought out and vetted ordinance. That by that time, perhaps we have seen how our own ordinance actually works. And we will have the wisdom of hindsight and perhaps having some empirical data that will assist us in making it a better ordinance. And by the time it becomes effective, any challenge to the urgency ordinance likely will have been filed and resolved or not, meaning we will have basically mooted out the concerns of the urgency ordinance by taking the action in the early first or second quarter of next year.
Great, thank you. My other question is for Ms. Tierney. Let's say a homeowner, a developer, an applicant wants a larger unit or a taller structure. There's nothing that would preclude them from going through the traditional discretionary process that already exists, correct?
Yeah, I'll let the city attorney chime in as well, but provided they meet all of our other standards, for example, you can have a duplex and single.
We allow duplexes in all residential zones.
Not in all residential zones, but we would, in like low density residential, you can do it with a use permit,
right,
and just would need to follow the regular process.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Which we're also in the process of working on our regular process through our zoning ad hoc, and just want to highlight for other members that we are working on streamlining our normal process. So a lot of the intent of SB 9 we're taking to heart and addressing through other code changes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Felder, how are you?
A follow-up to Councilmember Barnett's question. So on the urgency ordinance,
My apologies. On the urgency ordinance, if you bring the regular ordinance and let's say it fails to get approval, does the urgency ordinance continue in its place?
It does, until the council wishes to rescind or repeal it.
Okay. And I don't know who's the person asked this to. Has anyone contacted the city with requests or pending requests for implementation of SB 9?
Yeah, we've received a couple requests. I have some parcel maps that have been submitted to us for sort of preliminary review. I've been consulting with, we have a number of frequent flyers, whether they're architects or engineers, and I've been consulting with a couple engineering firms about our ordinance, and they do have some specific parcels in mind.
Okay. Is the timeline to hear the regular ordinance, is it set for March 2nd? Is there a way to move that up at all? I mean, it seems like you've done a lot of work on this. I know it says that you got to do, to get a regular ordinance, you've got to do all this work, but it seems to me you've done quite a lot of work already, and there's a couple of things, just to be transparent, that I'm concerned with in this. In this emergency ordinance, and I would be, and I'll say what they are at some point, but if I knew that it was going to happen at an earlier time, that we'd have an opportunity to make changes, that would, as opposed to letting it, go for a period of time, that might be part of my calculations.
So, well, I can replan the timing. So, we have planning commission hearings once a month. A regular ordinance is required to be recommended and reviewed by the planning commission and then to city council. Mm-hmm. And so with the holidays coming up, our next opportunity would be our January planning commission hearing. So that would require us to get the notice in the paper next week, essentially. So we could potentially consider that. We were just giving ourselves a little bit of a buffer to regroup after the holidays and hear what the testimony and comments were tonight before we move forward with a regular ordinance. So we could basically move it up 1 month.
Okay. Is there any, I notice your rationale for the deed restriction, which, we've received many correspondences that feel that is really a poison pill, if you will, in this, and people will not want to go forward because of it. Is there any way, and your rationale was that we don't want them at some point later on to turn these two homes into one, mini mansion or whatever it was called. Is there any way to just specify in our ordinance that that you're not allowed to do that? So we don't have to use the deed restriction as the rationale for something that really has nothing to do with deed restriction necessarily. It really has to do with not creating these, mansion-style homes as you describe. Can we just simply say that if you're approved for, these two parcels, that you can't then put them together and make one big one? I mean, are you allowed to do that?
I will let the city attorney chime in on that. What the deed restriction does is it's recorded on the title documents for the property, and so when it's transferred, that is an easy document for planners to read and review. We require a title report to be current with every planning application. If that is just part of the law, and then later a project comes in ministerially, we lose a little bit of control over that.
It just seems that one really has nothing to do with the other. I mean, and the deed restriction for affordability is about affordability.
That's only one of the primary reason is to get deed restricted affordable housing in the city of Sonoma that will help us with our RENA numbers, and maybe the planning director can chime in, but I believe that our RENA number for the next cycle is 300 and something units. Do you guys remember? 311 units. That's going to be really challenging. That's almost double what we had to do last time. So by deed restricting them, and in my experience, I've been administering our affordable housing program over the past few months, and a deed restricted moderate unit is essentially market rate. So it's a way of giving the city credit, but that doesn't really hamper. I don't believe it hampers a developer, precluded developer from wanting to develop it.
For rental.
For a rent, that would be for
we're talking rental. Yeah, I just feel like there's so many letters that we've received from people who are on the side of affordable housing that feel that this is somehow actually an impediment in a way, and it's unusual to receive letters to that, because usually they're saying, yeah, do that. That's great. We need more affordable. We've heard it about the SDC and many things. So when I hear that, and then I hear the rationale about not making, there's something just bothers me about that. It's like, is this real, or is this just a way to create an impediment? And what I don't want to see in any of our ordinances is something that we're really just trying to create, more hoops to jump through and more impediments to something that ultimately might benefit us, as you pointed out.
I think the intent was most definitely not to create an impediment. The intent was to increase our deed restricted housing. This year we rewrote our affordable housing ordinance and increased our inclusionary ordinance from 20% to 25%. We also added very low and extremely low income housing, and it's been a huge push of the city and the planning commission and city council to get more deed restricted housing and at those lower income levels. So this felt like an opportunity to add to that stock. When the city's inclusionary housing ordinance was first enacted in the early 2000s, the timeline was 25 years. Well, that's come and gone very quickly. So we're in a position where we're going to be losing our affordable housing units very quickly. And so anything we can do to preserve those units is, I believe, a benefit to the city in administering the affordable housing program. It is one of the most rewarding things that I've done at the city, when you are able to pre-qualify somebody for a unit that provides them protections. And it's not just the price of the unit, it's protecting them from being evicted, it's protecting them from a landlord deciding that they want to sell their property and cash out. There's a lot of uncertainty in the market, so it's more than just the dollar value. I think if there's concerns about that deed restriction being an impediment, a good conversation to have is maybe we don't want it to be low, maybe it should be moderate, but a moderate deed restricted unit is extremely close to market rate. When we updated our inclusionary ordinance, we surveyed property owners in the city and we compared the price of market rate bedroom units to deed restricted units, And for the moderate units, there are actually some cases where the moderate units are actually higher priced than the market rate units. And the reason for that is that the maximum price that can be charged is outlined based on the number of bedrooms. It has nothing to do with the square footage. So if you have a 3-bedroom unit for a family of 4, it's the same maximum price whether it's 1,600 square feet or 4,000 square feet. But obviously a 4,000 square foot place is going to be much more expensive. But if you over time there's wear and tear on the buildings. So a brand new unit, there's a bigger difference. But as the years go on, when in our survey of our inventory, there really is not a difference. Some of them are higher and some of them are actually lower too.
Yeah, and if as you said earlier, this particular law is you call it mom and pop sort of thing, and it's usually our affordable housing stock is not. We're not reliant on a mom and pop developer to provide that, especially since as the Turner study said, 5%. Which could be actually at the high level. It could be 1 or 2 units. Is it really, is this really going to do that, or is this just going to make the mom and pop developer say, this isn't worth it for me, I can't do it, and so they're going to back off, and then we're not going to get any housing stock out of it. So I think that's the concern.
Can I jump in? There was also concern that, obviously we want to preserve our affordable housing stock. We also want to preserve our housing stock for the missing middle, which I think was the point of SB 9. Mm-hmm. But I am just personally concerned, and we've discussed this, that there's really nothing that would preclude these sort of small 800 square foot units from being, snapped up as sort of second home, sort of weekend home places in Sonoma. And so that was sort of something that we considered. I mean, we talk about Picasso, and they're looking for those sort of like $800,000 shares of homes. Wouldn't you rather just have your own little place at $800,000, which probably these small units might end up going for? And so we're trying to sort of protect these units for the missing middle. And so that's sort of what we were looking at. And as Christina was saying, that especially for rental, that moderate rate is sort of market rate, but it's deed restricted in a way that would preclude it from, in my view, these units being sort of exploited by sort of second homeowners. And so it might not be perfect, but that was sort of some of the thinking that was going.
Well, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Was there any thought about expanding the 800 to 1,200 square feet, because that is allowable? And it seems like if you're looking for the missing middle, we're talking about families, and I think that's a better number for a family.
Well, again, I don't have any issue personally against 1,200 square feet. In principle. What concerns me is the sort of ministerial approval. And so we already have a process that allows you to sort of put forward your project. And at that point, obviously, the city staff and the planning commission would review the project. And historically, in my view, the planning commission generally supports housing and approves most housing projects. And so that is sort of, and we'll talk about this more, but that is sort of the issue, that you can just sort of get ministerial approval over the counter with SB 9, which is sort of completely new for Sonoma and completely new for California, that the state has decided to come in and take our police power to regulate local land use. And so that is, I think, sort of the most important, I guess, discussion item. That, I mean, I support missing middle housing, I support housing. I think Sonoma historically has sort of done a good job at that, and I think we need to continue to do a good job at that. And in my view, and we'll talk about this more, I think our planning commission and our city council and our planning staff has a good record of adding housing to Sonoma and also knows what's better for Sonoma. than Sacramento, and that's just sort of the issue here. So.
If I could also go back real quick, so the part of the reason for the deed restriction is going back to our inclusionary housing update. So we actually, as through that process, we are imposing inclusionary housing requirements on every single residential development now. So if it's 4 units or more, we require the dedication of 1 unit. If it's less, we require a fractional contribution. So it was really in keeping with the intent of that. And that you actually can go over 800 square feet, provided that you have a larger lot. So there are cases where, oh, we take that out? That was a different draft?
You said minimum, maximum 800.
Yeah, that's all it says is 800 in the ordinance.
In the previous version, the FAR and, okay, pardon me.
But let me chime in if I may through the mayor. That doesn't include anybody who wants to develop a larger dwelling that fits on the lot, and it doesn't violate the setbacks or any of the other things that require a variance or an exception. You don't need to go through discretionary review because it automatically goes through. So it doesn't come to the planning commission unless you're trying to adjust the setbacks or something else on the lot.
If you need a use permit, right?
Yeah, then you need it. So we're
Excuse me,
we're
Mayor Dane.
really talking about trying to protect people to be able to do what they want, but if they want to go the SB9 route, then you don't have any chance to see what they're going to put up on that lot, and that's an important distinction, I think.
Thank you.
We
Thank
have
you.
David Storer with his hands
Yes.
patiently raised. David, you can
David,
go
please,
ahead and
thank
speak
you for your
anytime.
patience.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to address a comment by Councilmember Lowe. I think I heard Christina volunteer to work during the Christmas holiday because she's willing to write the staff report for the January Planning Commission meeting. And I'm just kidding there, folks. We have relatively few business days, and part of the reasoning for having it not at the January meeting is because we would need to put some resources into staff in preparation of that meeting. We already have a full agenda, but yes, it can be added for sure if that is the direction of the council. But it means that we only have about 3 business days in which to get that packet out for publication the weekend before that meeting. There's also a second piece to the equation too, and that is we are required by law in our advertising and our legal ad to specifically state what the recommendation of the Planning Commission is to the City Council on the ordinance. And so we can't really advertise it for a hearing until we know what that action is of the Planning Commission. So I just want to kind of add that in there. That's why we schedule the way we have. I will point out one last thing, and that is prior to Councilmember Lowe coming on the council, we used to have a 20-day public notification period, and we've streamlined that. So we are looking at ways to not only streamline our process, but also provide affordable housing in the city. And that goes specifically to the dedication of these units in perpetuity, because we want to, through design, by design, keep these units small and allow them for people that most need of them. Thank you.
And Mayor Dang, if I could just add, I think there's some pros and cons, because I understand what Council Member Lowe was discussing in terms of let's try to expedite this and get the regular ordinance on the books as quickly as possible. And I think there's a benefit to that, obviously. But one thing I would say that perhaps we should consider is it would be interesting to see how SB 9 is implemented, like throughout the state. Maybe some other cities will, and so if we keep the urgency ordinance longer, to the extent, I don't know how long it's possible, we might be able to, from literally on the ground data, be able to craft a better permanent ordinance.
Thank you. Councilman Felder? Yeah.
And just to hitchhike on that, I believe we have the ability to repeal an urgency ordinance at any time if we so choose to do so from the council. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is it isn't it like 45 days and then a year or something? How is there?
He's thinking moratorium.
Yeah.
Oh, that's moratorium.
Yeah, there's another section dealing with moratorium.
Okay.
The total period of a moratorium It's 2 years, but it's incremental. It's 45, I think it's 15
Okay, so I
days,
confused
45
the two.
days. But
So
this-
urgency ordinance is indefinite until,
Yes.
oh, wow, okay.
So in this way, we have sufficient time to improve. I think the most important thing is for us, we need to take care of the day-to-day our service. You already received a couple of the application. Yeah, we want to be in the compliant. That is the number one. When federal law and state law and our local codes cannot conform, and then we should find, resolution. I don't want to see any in a single day our residents, they don't have any law, no Bible to rely on. Yeah, that's number one. As to the 800 square feet, I agree with the Vice Mayor and the Barnett. The reason is SB 9, this so new, and it's the intention that is solve the housing crisis, and finally, we can solve the affordable housing. Yeah, that is the intention. However, so far they don't have any function, any tool based on this rule to solve this issue. So under this situation, I really don't want to see just only the 800 square feet for this, tiny house, maybe just only for a couple or one child. But right now, labor costs, material costs, increasing dramatically. So if we, give this a chance to the property owner, and they could be, so-called affordable. That is my thinking. So it's not good. Also, we may missing the middle incomes, but so that is I'm thinking. Maybe I'm not right, but that is I'm thinking. And also, my another question is, do you have any requirement under the SB 9 for the time for the properties and ownership? And what I mean is, I really don't want to see any outsiders from out of the Sonoma, another the county or the state, come to here, take advantage, bought a piece of the land. And if any, requirement, ownership requirement, for example, of 5 years at least, own it. Yeah. So that is really, really, is the issue. So now I already smell, some speculators, they are active because the land in the Sonoma County is increasing a lot, and also much potential, and compared to another 9 counties in the Bay Area.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest we open this up for public comment and get the comments from the public before we continue with the council deliberation?
That is right. Thank you. Right now, it's open to the public. If any.
Good evening, Mayor Ding, Vice Mayor Barnett, council members. My name is Kyle Weeks, and I'm the Policy Director for Generation Housing, where we advocate for more diverse and more affordable housing. The entire country is facing a housing crisis. We don't have enough homes, we don't have nearly enough missing middle homes, and climate action requires us to shift our building focus from suburban sprawl to job and transit-oriented development. The stark reality is that failure to build a diversity of homes, including those that offer middle-income earners a path to homeownership, will only, serve to further drive displacement, strain already rent-burdened members of our service and agricultural-based industries, and undermine the long-term sustainability goals of the city of Sonoma. SB 9 was designed to unlock this missing middle housing, as was discussed today, and promote diversity in neighborhoods previously zoned exclusively for single-family homes. What's really truly concerning about this entire process is that the Planning Commission has been transparent from day one about their interest in limiting the implementation of SB 9, making such comments as, I think we all share the concern about this potential impact and we want to do whatever we can to minimize it. And just designate the city as a whole as a historic district and we're done with SB 9. These comments smack of anti-housing sentiments that seek to, quote, protect vested interests in the community. The effort to thwart broad implementation of SB 9 is particularly concerning given the equity issues as well. Inaction on housing hurts our communities of colors the most, forcing them to live farther and farther away or possibly in substandard and overcrowded conditions. How is that equitable? So, with that, I would urge you, elected leaders of Sonoma City Council, to consider the following amendments to SB 9 objective standards. Increase the square footage maximum requirement to 1,200 square feet, not 800 as currently written. As an alternative, consider Commissioner Barbosa's suggestion that the first floor unit be allowed a square footage of between 1,000 and 1,200 square feet, and the second or secondary attached unit be limited to 800 square feet. This creates the privacy and it also allows for more opportunities for families to live comfortably. And in respect to low and moderate deed restrictions, those have to go. There is no way in hell that this will feasibly pencil out if you place these deed restrictions on duplexes and triplexes. It just won't happen. This is a poison pill. If the city of Sonoma chooses this route and truly values affordable housing as it so claims, then you need more skin in the game. Reduce impact and permit fees, subsidize the units, or create guidelines that help community members navigate this process. Exemptions must be made. And I'd just like to end by saying that I'm not sure a lot of this will really pass the legal muster. I would encourage your legal counsel to explore SB 330 and also look at the no net loss provision. I do believe that is applicable here. And I also strongly disagree that this is really, truly a situation where you can enact an urgency ordinance. What is the impact to the community? There is none. There is no harm, no physical harm. And so I strongly disagree with that, and I would strongly encourage your legal counsel to tread carefully. There are communities that are facing litigation. I would review that, and they have also explored and passed urgency ordinances. Just a word of caution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Ding, members of the council. My name is Bill Willers. I live at 873 First Street West. I urge the council to adopt this urgency ordinance. I live next door to a 720 square foot house that is occupied by someone who lives in Tahoe. They have visited the house in the entire time that they've owned it, approximately 10 days. They bought that 750 square foot house for over $760,000. I also live in a neighborhood that has 1,600 square foot houses on very small lots, comparable to what SB 9 will create. Those houses sell for $1,400,000 recently. That is the impact in Sonoma of building houses of 800 square feet when you build 2 of them. You're looking at a $1.4 million project. You're looking at a cost of construction of over $500 a square foot. And if that is a market rate building, you have not produced any form of affordable housing. So the only way that the city can adopt SB 9, go forward with the rules and regulations that the state has passed on it, under the guise of creating affordable housing, yet not putting that in the law. The only way that the city can do that is to, one, to protect the property owners adjacent to these properties that don't have that inclination. And that's where the size of the unit protects the adjacent property owner. A property would have to be over 11,000 square feet to even come to the current standards in our zoning to allow that amount of square footage on a property. Most of the properties in Sonoma are about 7,500 square feet in the low density, and that parcel in and of itself, when you put 2 800 square foot units on it, the parking on it, the driveway on it, you exceed the capacity of that property already. So SB 9 has created the problem that you as a council have to deliberate and solve through an urgency ordinance so that you have more time to consider the needs of the community. I urge you to adopt this. Lastly, I sent around a letter related to the impacts of height. I truly believe that you should control the height of the wall, not the overall height of the roof, because some buildings have flat roofs. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you see in the Zoom?
We do have several on Zoom.
All right.
Our first is Jim McFadden.
My name is Jim McFadden. I've been living here in the Sonoma Valley since 1975, and I strongly oppose SB 9 urgency ordinance. It unnecessarily places several major limitations on the potential creation of missing middle housing in Sonoma. We in the Sonoma Valley Housing Group hope that you will honor the intent of the law and see SB 9 as an opportunity to build housing affordable by design for the 120 to 140 AMI cohort. Deed restricting SB 9 units to low income for renters and moderate income owners assures that nothing will be built. The level of affordability proposed is uneconomical for developers building on a lot-by-lot basis. There are many poorly built, deteriorating houses on large lots on the west side that lend themselves to being replaced by a couple of duplexes or cottage clusters. And since the purpose of the urgency ordinance seems to be to evade the law, as Councilmember Lowe has kind of indicated is a possibility, we suspect that the state would simply sue to overturn it if it passed. So instead, we recommend letting the law do what is intended and focusing the city's energies on an equitable housing element. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McFadden.
Next, we have Rafa Sonnenfeld.
Good evening, council members. My name is Rafa Sonnenfeld. I'm calling on behalf of Yes in My Backyard and its Project E Law. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but the ordinance that is before you this evening does not stand up to the level of scrutiny that's required in order to be passed. SB 330, the Housing Crisis Act of 2019, places limits on downzonings that cannot occur without a commensurate upzoning. So it's very simple. Because SB 9 applies to single-family homes, there cannot be a standard such as a greater setback, a lower height limit, a lower floor area ratio, greater open space requirements for units built under SB 9 than applied to single-family residents constructed within the same zoning district. So you really have to be careful about how you implement this. Things like the Creekside objective standards that you have, those are already in your code. Those can remain. That's where the 800 square foot provision of SB 9 comes in. But if you have other standards which are lower than your existing single family residence zoning, those would not be permitted under the law. So I just want to let you know that you really should make some changes. This particular ordinance has been referred to the HCD Housing Accountability Unit for enforcement, and it's very likely that the state will be releasing some guidance in the new year that clarifies that this is not a permitted use under the law. So I'd recommend that you reconsider your proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sonnenfeld.
Next, we have Fred Alaba.
Good evening, Mayor Ding,
City Council and City staff. I trust that you've been able to read my voluminous comments to date, and I'll make a few more this evening. I'd just like to note that, yes, the city did do a lot of outreach and noted such outreach, but the pro-SB9 views that were brought forth seem to be entirely absent from the proposed ordinance. SB9 has been framed only as a problem, not as a benefit, and it's not likely that the stakeholders who I'm a member of who see SB9 as a benefit are entirely deluded. With Generation Housing, Sonoma Valley Collaborative, Sonoma Valley Housing Group, we have no points that made it into the ordinance. I didn't see one in the staff report tonight. So I think that the idea that there'll be a more well thought out ordinance in February is clear that my cohort has been disenfranchised already from that. That if we had some points in there, they would have been in there already. I don't think this is all about fending off evil speculators, but it's rather potentials that the law would act as intended to create the missing middle and attainable housing. Now, there's some tension there. And so this is where I make the point that my cohort's not entirely deluded. We've got to have some points here, but there's no balance of our points in this ordinance. Particularly as written, the affordable housing requirement makes the creation of such housing impossible. It's just economically infeasible. And the connection here with the city using that to count RENA, I made some notes here that, it just doesn't make sense to do it that way. That seems to be like Councilmember Lowe seems it does not add up. I would like to see some proper research to show how much it costs to build one of these units and whether a property owner could actually make their money back with a low and a moderate type of rent or sale price. And if the city is going to count ADUs as moderate for RENA, but then you're going to count an 800 square foot SB9 unit as low, that doesn't make sense. So we had the UGB ordinance. It was all about infill, people writing letters to the paper. We got to build up. And here we see just all kind of reasons why we can't get the type of infill and neighborhood integration that's really called for. The idea of SB9 is to get rid of regulatory barriers and create some housing, not to add more barriers. Infill is dense. It goes up. And it needs to be shared across all city neighborhoods and zones, and not just stuffed on West Napa Street on the Chevy parking lot. Neighborhoods need to share this. So I urge you to not pass this, or to take stock of Steve Barbossa's recommendation and have at least one of the units be 1,200 square feet, and to bump up your deed restriction to 120 to 140% AMI, so that the people will have a chance of
Mr. Auerbach, your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Auerbach.
Next, we have Caitlin Cornwall.
Good evening, Caitlin Cornwall. I am staff to the coalition that's called Sonoma Valley Collaborative, an extremely broad coalition of organizations and interest groups across Sonoma Valley. We have a big focus right now on housing affordability because it is hurting all sectors of our community. I know that you've heard from some of our members, like La Luz and Sonoma Valley Hospital and the Chamber and Sonoma Valley Housing Group. And they all have their somewhat different perspectives on this issue, but what unites the entire collaborative is the extreme, urgent, and worsening need for housing that is affordable for working people, of all types of working people in the valley and in the city. And if you sincerely believe that the proposed approaches genuinely will produce housing that people who live and work here can afford, I just think it's not being credible right now. So people who are extremely concerned about the ability of folks to live here are having a hard time believing that the Planning Commission in the city really are producing those opportunities. And maybe this just needs more conversation, but there's a trust problem that's developing, and I hope that we can overcome it. Maybe we need to have some more conversations, but generally folks in the collaborative think that the intent of SB 9 is exactly what we need. And so trying to put these additional constraints on it and conditions on it is not sitting that well. So I'll stop there and let the members of our coalition speak for themselves, but I just wanted to give you that sort of more overarching perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell.
There are no more hands raised for Zoom.
All right, yeah, let's get back to our council. I have a question. How to approve urgency ordinance? How many votes we need, or?
You need 4 votes.
And also, Council Member Agrimonti is not here. I think it is very important an issue, and personally, I would like to see all of us, to come participate to this, because it's definitely it's controversy. Yeah, so the fully discussed, and everybody understands what you're talking about, and hopefully we can get some common grounds. But right now it's during holiday season. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe Mr. Toyle, any suggestion or?
So I think what the issue that was pointed out is, does the council believe it's important to have something on the books while it works on an ordinance that could be further revised based on some of the comments that you provided this evening? And so if you wait, then in essence you won't have anything on the books, because you have some options. You can adopt an urgency ordinance with some provisions, although we would say it'd be difficult to wordsmith it at a certain level. It'd be good to keep those revisions at a minimum so it doesn't get so confusing. Or you can choose not to adopt an urgency ordinance, in which case you have nothing in place, and so if any applications are submitted, they would just default to state. And your other options, you could wait until the Planning Commission noodles it based on your comments, but again, that won't take effect at the earliest until maybe March. Again, you wouldn't have anything in place until then. You could adopt the urgency ordinance later, but again, you have issues with you won't have anything in place when the law takes effect in January. So it does take a 4/5 vote, so that's why you need all 4 of you. If there was 5 of you, then you need 4 out of the 5. So I think it's more of a council. The first step for the council to decide if you want to have something in place, and then the question is this what you would like to have in place while you noodle, have the Planning Commission come up with something based on the comments and feedback that you give to staff this evening?
Thank you. Other than Councilman, Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Ding. Well, just to follow up on that, I mean, we haven't really had our discussion yet, so perhaps
yes,
there will be 4 votes, or maybe I don't know where we're going to go with this, but there could be another option of having another meeting before the end of the year, correct? Like if, for example, we didn't have 4 votes to pass an urgency ordinance tonight, but the majority wanted to at least flesh that out, and to Mayor Ding's point, if we want to have the full council here, we could potentially do that.
Yes, you always have that option.
Okay.
You would have a special meeting sometime before the end of the year.
Okay.
Or you can continue this meeting to a date certain, and it retains its regular meeting status. You wouldn't need to renotice it, for example.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that is. How about?
Obviously I have my concerns about this ordinance. I understand, the time of year is not working in our favor, and I have no desire to see staff or council members come in the last part of December to to do that. I think that's not fair to anybody, and so forth. The thing that I want to see is I want to see some changes in this, or at least an opportunity for that. I don't think we can do that tonight. I agree with the mayor, and that I'd like to see the 1,200 square foot put back in. I'd like to consider Planning Commissioner Barbos's suggestions. I have questions regarding flag lots and basements, and I just don't think we should just layer on things, especially things that we don't, that we permit under other circumstances. We don't, it's not a, we don't ever, tell anyone else you can't have a basement. I mean, we're not a basement kind of a place, but let's say somebody wants a basement, or they want a wine cellar or something, we don't tell them they can't have it. I understand the difficulty in with the lots on the flag lot. I learned a lot from you today. Thank you so much for taking the time, Christina. But I think some of these things, even though they may be helpful in terms of helping the applicant, get a better product, they look at like impediments, and they send a message that we're really trying to find things that deter people from doing this, rather than finding things to make it, make it work more smoothly. So, in saying that, I have a sense that there's a majority of people who'd like to see this go forward. I'm very interested in the regular ordinance. I'm very interested in what I've been reading, what other places are doing, and some of the things, surprised me. For example, there was one where they used the Design Review Commission, which I didn't really see in any of this, as they felt like that could be part of it, and maybe that's a better process than saying it can't be this high or this wide or what color or whatever, and using our same process. I don't know if that's a viable alternative, but that might work. The bottom line is I think we do need to have an ordinance. I honestly don't, even though you say there's a couple people planning on it, I don't think much is going to happen. I honestly don't think much is going to happen with this law, because it's just most people don't want to tear down their home and build two homes or do this. They just don't have the resources to do it, and they don't want to do it. That's why they have a single family home in the first place. So I'm not too worried about it, and yet I'm, at the same point, I kind of want the people who do want to do it to be able to do it in a way that's respectful and relatively straightforward. So I will side with my colleagues on the urgency ordinance, with the caveat that we bring this back, and that some of the things that have been discussed get a fair hearing. And I will vote no on the final ordinance if I feel that, these things have not been addressed, and the affordable housing activists and have not had an opportunity to see some of their, which I think are realistic concerns, be addressed. So I feel that there's a majority here, and I don't, because of the 4 votes, I want to allow that to move forward. Even though it's an urgency ordinance, I believe majority rules. That's how we work in the good old US of A. So I'll do that, but I really do want to say that when this thing comes forward, I would like to see some changes. And I might be in the minority, but at that point, I think I can comfortably voice my opposition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Lady Lowe. Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah.
I like that.
Council lady. Yeah.
I've been called worse, by the way.
if I offend, sorry about that. Maybe
No,
I
no,
using
no,
a
I
different.
like it.
Yeah.
I'll go. Well, first of all, I believe that this is something we need to get on the books as soon as possible. And we have the ability to change it with a regular ordinance. We have the ability to repeal it if we find that it's not working. But to put this off till mid-April just invites people to come in and take advantage of a situation that may not be good for the city of Sonoma. And so I don't see the real downside of passing this urgency ordinance right now tonight. I do agree that with Bill Willers from the public comment that one phrase should be added to the height paragraph because there's a danger of, if you just specify the total height of the building, you could end up with a flat roof and you could have an awfully high wall. So I don't know if staff has that phrase in front of them from his correspondence.
We have it, but I need some clarification. You have it in front of you?
Yes.
How does it work when the two-story roof cannot exceed 25 feet, but the plate height can be 20 feet?
You have a 5-foot roof.
You have a 5-foot
yeah,
roof structure?
That's sufficient pitch on the roof.
That's
yeah.
sufficient?
Yes.
Well, if it's an easy enough insert, it's in front of us. If
It's
the council wants to
what it's
include
really
that.
doing is it's trying to prevent you from just building a big wall in a flat roof.
Are flat roofs allowed in Sonoma?
Yeah.
They are.
But if you're talking about a 4-foot setback and a 25-foot structure right next to that setback with a flat roof, that is going to be significant intrusion in the neighbor's situation. So,
Can you build currently? Can you build a single-family home within 4 feet of the side
No.
yard and
No.
4 feet of the rear yard with a 25-foot high roof?
no.
Oh. Okay.
And if there are setbacks on the second story, there's a bunch, but there's an initial setback even for the first story, and an additional setback for the second story. So this is trying to prevent a very unworkable situation for the neighborhood.
Okay.
So I would.
Does each council member
would
have
give
this
the rest
additional
of-
language in front of you? Okay. So if there's a motion to adopt this urgency ordinance, it should include a statement that the revision suggested by Mr. Willers in his December 15, 2001 letter be included as
Right.
part of the
And I don't
ordinance
want
itself.
to preclude the discussion, of the other council members here, but I felt that is an important addition if we were to pass something tonight. And so that is my position. I want us to see us pass the urgency ordinance with that phrase in there.
Can I ask a question of Mr. Felder through the chair?
Yes, sure.
Is the comment of the addition, is that something that is in the regular design code that we have right now? I mean, can people do it, or is it just for SB 9?
This is for this specific situation where we have a 4-foot setback from a side property line.
Right, but I mean,
We would have, I believe, at least 7 feet I'm trying to think of the code, but there would be a significantly bigger setback for the first story. And then if you're having a second story on top of that, that would have to be set back even further. So in SB 9, you don't have that control. You just say 4-foot setback and build it as high as you want it.
mm-hmm. Okay, so this is something that's very specific to this, and that, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. You're an expert in this, and I am not.
Yeah. We are grateful for both of you as ad hoc committee.
I didn't want to grab the floor too early and let everybody else have their say, but I'm definitely want to pass it tonight with that one additional phrase.
Thank you, Mayor Ding. I want to thank a lot of people. I want to thank Jeff Walter for his work on this ordinance, David Storr, our planning director, Christina Tierney for shepherding this. I also really want to thank Bill Willers and Michael Ross and Robert Bauman and Ray Willett, architects that provided comments during this process. And I just want to thank our Planning Commission Chair, Ron Wellender, and his commission as well. This has been a very unique process. As was discussed earlier, this law was just passed in September. And so this has been an interesting process the last few months, trying to figure out, A, how we respond to it, how we implement it, and then if we do respond to it or if we do implement it, how that comes about. I mean, we were just sort of creating things and learning from the design community, and it was a unique process. And so I do support passing the urgency ordinance, and I want to explain why. One of our public commenters, Caitlin, said that there's a trust issue between the city, and we say we support affordable housing, we say we support more housing, and that I assumed the point was if you support housing that is affordable for working people, you should support the broad implementation of SB 9, and I just reject that premise. I don't think there's anything in SB 9, especially in the city of Sonoma, that is going to produce affordable housing or even housing that is affordable for working people. I know that there's the view out there that housing is all supply and demand, and as long as you increase some supply, obviously it'll reduce price. And that is just not how it works, and that's certainly not how it works in Sonoma. When you have basically, I don't want to say you have unlimited demand, but when you have such significant demand for housing in Sonoma, the amount of supply you would have to add to even begin to bend the price curve would change Sonoma. And so then we're going to have to find a new economy. Meaning, I know that a lot of people say that character and our sort of quaint small town atmosphere is sort of a dirty word when it comes to producing housing, but I actually think Sonoma has done a great job of balancing that and producing and adding a lot more housing. But unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, our quaint small town character currently pays the bills. And so we do have to consider that. And I think we can do both. I think we can add housing in a good way that contributes and not detracts from Sonoma and contributes to our character and doesn't detract from it. And I think we can do that because we have done that, and we've been doing that for a long time. I think the Planning Commission is actually very pro housing development and generally approves projects and makes them better through the process. And so, I like to think, we were talking about this on SDC, like we have to get it right. And I think we have to get this ordinance right, and we have to get adding housing in Sonoma right. And I don't think it's an either or situation. I think we can add housing that is affordable for working people, and I just don't know if SB 9 is the way to go about it. But it is the law of the state, and we have to implement it. I know there are some couple commenters that sort of imply that we were trying to evade the law. I do not think that's the case. I don't think Jeff Walter, for all his decades in municipal law, would allow us to pass something that is designed to evade the law. And so we are implementing SB 9, and we're taking advantage of the objective standards that our state legislature has allowed us to implement. Also, this law was designed to create more density in zones that are exclusively for single-family homes. And I believe Sonoma really has no zoning or zones that are exclusively for single-family homes. In every zoning district in Sonoma, and maybe not the Hillside, I don't want to have someone say that I was wrong on this, but in general, every developable non-environmentally sensitive zoning district in Sonoma, you can, through a use permit process, have a duplex, or many of them are principally permitted. And so we don't have single-family home zoning in Sonoma. when it comes to Sonoma, the city of Sonoma's commitment to housing and housing development and affordable housing, I think we actually have a very good record on that. We have just last year increased our inclusionary ordinance from 20 to 25%. We, as Christina Tierney said earlier, we have expanded even the AMI bands to include low and very low that we had not included before. We established a housing trust fund that we are beginning to create, and ultimately creating more deed restricted and affordable housing in Sonoma is extremely important to me, and I think extremely important to this council. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is through money, or through our inclusionary ordinance. We've met our RENA numbers for the last cycle, and so I think Sonoma has done a good job. And so I guess I get frustrated sometimes by housing advocates that I consider myself to be a member of, say that there's a trust issue here, because I just believe that the city is doing its best to produce the kind of housing that Sonoma needs, and that is for working people. And I just don't see anything in SB 9, if it's just implemented ministerially, which we are doing, that will produce that kind of housing for working people. I really worry about these sort of small units. They're going to be very attractive as sort of second home, pied-à-terre. I've completely mispronounced that. But I think you all knew what I was trying to say, for people from the city or the greater Bay Area on the weekend. And so in an effort, and I just also want to make the other point that there is nothing that precludes a homeowner or developer from going through a process if they want larger units or a taller structure or anything. We have a normal process that I've just tried to state, I think has worked relatively well over the last few years, decades, etc. And so it is our obligation and responsibility to implement SB 9, and I think we're doing that responsibly. But we also have a discretionary process if people believe that the standards we have implemented through SB 9 do not meet what they want to do with their property. We also have a discretionary process. So that's sort of ultimately what I think. I think that while we have an obligation, as I just said, to implement SB 9, I do think that the four of us, plus Madeline, our, Councilwoman Agrimonti, and our Planning Commission and our housing advocates and the people that live here, I think can get this right and ultimately know how to develop and add to our housing stock better than these sort of one-size-fits-all mandates from Sacramento. And I do hope that moving forward, I do think we have a housing affordability crisis and a housing crisis in this state, and I appreciate what Sacramento is trying to do. I just worry about the one-size-fits-all approach, because ultimately Sonoma is a unique place, and we want to add to that, and we need to create housing stock, and I really appreciate and hear a lot of what Sonoma Valley Collaborative has to say on this. And as we embark upon our housing element, which I believe we have scheduled for January, I really think everyone needs to be at the table. Generation Housing, the Sonoma Valley Collaborative, we all need to get our minds together, because I think together we can figure out a way to add housing for the people that need it in Sonoma, because we've done it and we need to do a better job, but we've done it and we'll continue to do it. And while we will implement SB 9 by state law, I think we know as a small town how to do this better than Sacramento. So that is why I support the urgency ordinance.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Barnett. I appreciate it. We are, city council representing the people that are here. The most important thing for us, I think, we should preserve our authority, our control for those in the coding, for the house coding, to the extent allowed by the law. So that is the only thing that we can do. So from my side, I really don't want to see we have one day losing any, the law to use, to apply. So I really don't know. And then maybe we can, four of us, maybe we can discuss again, see if anything, we can find more common grounds and then move forward. Also, that is because this is too new for us. If any chance we can work on this in the future, let this ordinance getting better. We want to try the best. Also, I don't want to disappoint those kind of applicants. They are, quick responder. That is right. They want to do the right thing. I don't want them to see, oh, we are not ready. So if I'm missing understanding, you mentioned about the 800 square feet or something like that. You also mentioned 1,200 by the, that is also, it's kind of it's good, more reasonable, 1,200, that also, I don't know how do you think about that? Yeah, so it's not only this 400 square foot additional, it's kind of the message, the send to our local residents. We fully support, affordable housing, and want to get everything done. Try our best.
I mean, I think that would be appropriate to discuss while we're discussing the regular ordinance. I mean, I think at this point I wouldn't be comfortable supporting that now, but, and I'm not saying I would ever be comfortable supporting that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we just discuss. We can see the more common grounds. We are in the same group. We represent different people, but we respect each other's opinion and see if we can find the common grounds. That is the best way, we can move forward. Yeah.
Just to add, I think it's prudent to stay with the 800 for now. There are reasons for that, based on the average size of a single-family parcel in Sonoma, and what it might produce as a lot split, and how much you can put on that lot. So we'd be happy to have that discussion during the regular ordinance to show you the facts and figures and how they would fit, and why that number was made to be just 800. But I would certainly be open to discussing that as we move forward.
Also, I'm not open.
I agree.
To discuss. Yeah.
I'm open to discussing it. I will say a 1,200 square foot unit will obviously be more expensive, and which is the market.
That is right. Yeah, I haven't finished a minor question to Mr. Water yet. Before the open to the public, I ask you, do we have any requirement for SB 9 for the residents and the ownership for this piece of the land, previous, or 5 years or 10 years?
No, there's no requirement.
Okay. Do you have any requirement after you build up SB 9 units? You should own it. You should live over there for another 2 years or 5 years or 10 years.
SB 9 requires that in the context of a urban lot split, the owner must sign a declaration that he, she, or it will reside there for 3 years.
Okay, reside there. Okay, that is very good.
In the original
Chair,
house.
but isn't that they intend to reside there?
Intent.
I mean, it's a little.
Oh yeah, it's not very clear. Yeah, that is a lot of things. I saw that a lot of things. Very, very, tricky. We don't fully understand, so that's the reason
And that's just
why
one
I
unit.
support,
Yeah.
urgent and ordinary, the ordinance, urgent and ordinance. We have the lot of. Why I'm not concerned is, if no this kind of requirement, outside people easily buy a older house, just the neighbor over the beer willer, they bought it. And then using this, applying with the Christina, and then they can build it too. They want to sell it. And then, who got the benefits? Those kind of investors, outside investors. That is my concern. It's not,
that's all that we can do.
I do have the personal experience. The last June, I will not say the friend, just like the people know each other. She is an investor. She specialized in Atherton and Menlo Park and Stamford neighborhood. They purchased an old house, maybe in the 1940 or 1950s, and $3 or $4 million, and then they turned it down. And then they apply easily. They can apply 2 units, build up. Later on, I want to show you the picture. Very interesting. She is kind of the quick money earned. I really don't like it this way. They fully take advantage. Every day or every year she could do this repeated again 4 times. Yeah, 4 times. That means $10 million. That is. But anyway, maybe this is too far away. But I look at the new law. I'm not sure who is the final benefits. I really don't know. So that's the reason we need a time to look. And but again, affordable housing, that is what we needed, to work and fight for this.
You could also make a case that SB 9, just by the passage of SB 9, has increased the underlying land value of all homes already in Sonoma, because it has increased the development potential. And so, in an effort to create more housing, or at least create more affordable housing, I think SB 9 might not have necessarily done that. But beyond that, it sounds like we are going to be discussing the regular ordinance in fairly short order. And so if we do pass an urgent ordinance, what I would like to just ultimately say is my goal is obviously to produce housing in Sonoma for people that need it, quite frankly. And that was sort of part of the deed restriction discussion. But I wanted to mention, I forgot to mention when I was discussing, a public commenter discussed how this is intended for the missing middle in that 120 to 140 AMI. And so I don't know, I want to say during our inclusionary ordinance, didn't we add a new strata in our code, like for missing middle?
We did. We added the middle income bracket,
Which is like 120 to 140.
It is.
And so I would be open, while we're discussing the regular ordinance, at least for ownership units, to deed restricting them at that missing middle. Because if this is really what this is about, I'd be more than happy to do the deed restriction on the missing middle, and hopefully that would reduce the potential for these to be used as sort of second home, weekend homes.
The downside to that would be it wouldn't count for arena numbers. Just a consideration.
Could it be above moderate? I mean, it'd be market.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's just something to talk about in the future. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yes.
So maybe a suggestion for the council.
Sure.
Just as a side note, I spoke to planning staff, and so while the planning commission won't be able to hear the regular ordinance in January, they can have a study session at their meeting and consider a lot of the council's comments, so they could start thinking about it and give some direction to staff to the ordinance that they may consider in February, if that helps. So we could start the discussion sooner to have them talk about all the issues, and we can clearly summarize these notes and share that with them.
Is any blank in the area and for the local residents to apply and know any rules, know any code to rely on? Because the new law were affected January the 1st, 2022, right?
So
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
if I can, I think what we're saying is that we'd adopt the urgency tonight and then just hurry up and start having the discussions at the planning commission for the regular ordinance.
yeah, I think sorry, as clarification, I was saying,
Okay.
while the planning commission will consider a regular ordinance in February, there's no rule that says in January they can't just talk about it and consider your comments and recommend to staff or give direction to staff that perhaps the urgency ordinance should be modified to include some of these different things to address some of the council's concerns.
Okay, yeah. Do you have any? Yeah.
Can I also suggest, as you get closer to considering adopting this ordinance, in addition to Mr. Willer's changes, I'd recommend to provide a little bit of flexibility for those who would be coming forth early next year applying for this privilege to give them a bit more flexibility by suggesting we change the language a little bit with respect to the 800 square foot floor area requirement. Right now, that is the only size that's allowed. There may be those who, because of design considerations, size of lot, configuration of lot, would want to make it smaller. So I would suggest we add, as part of your motion, we include language that says wherever it talks about the 800 square foot floor area requirement, it reads something to the effect that it's no greater than 800 square feet in floor area. So that would give a little bit of flexibility on the downside of that number. That would be my recommendation.
Interesting. So as written,
Yeah.
if someone wanted to propose a 750 square foot unit, they could not go through the SB9.
Correct.
Interesting. Yeah, of course. Okay. I'm fine with that.
And I assume that would carry forth if we adjust that number to 1,200, that it would be up to, and yes.
That would be our proposal. If
Yeah.
there's a number that you're willing to live with that's more than 800, then certainly
Right.
anything beneath
Yes.
that should be acceptable also.
Exactly.
That's great. Yes. That's great. Yeah.
So you want specific language?
Yeah.
You just
We
want
are
to say-
we are ready
That's
greater
to
Yeah.
let's
And I've got
talk
it
with
flat. I've got it.
Mr.
here.
Toy.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh no, I
We'd
was
like
just.
to make a motion.
It-
You know.
Do you need?
Right now, what time right now? Let me look.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. 3. Oh, yeah. We
Yeah.
didn't open the new item. All right. Yeah.
So if you did make a motion, what you would do is you would follow staff recommendation,
Mhm.
but you would at the end, where it says introduce and adopt an ordinance entitled. Once you get through that part, then you would say with the amendments to height, and we could either read it in, because it's only one sentence, and then you would add the part where the city attorney just added and direction to change as appropriate, where it says shall be 800 square feet would be no greater than 800, no greater than 800 square feet, and then that's direction for us to change it appropriately.
Sounds like for me, I think it's okay. Yeah. And how about, yeah, you and you need
Can I just say so moved with what the city manager said?
Yeah.
Yes, you can, but I would ask that you
Okay.
actually read the title of the
All
ordinance that's in the packet as part of that motion.
If you read the recommended action, we read that whole part, then we could help you what the amendment would be.
I make a motion to introduce and adopt the urgency ordinance amending the Sonoma Municipal Code to add section 1941 related to ministerial residential projects in residential zoning districts and section 1972 related to ministerial parcel maps for urban lot splits, and finding this action is not a project under Division 13 of the Public Resources Code, with the modification to the height restriction and to the minimum square footage addition from the city attorney.
Does that work?
Is that enough?
Yes.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Felder,
Yes?
Councilmember Lowe, Vice Mayor Barnett,
Aye.
Mayor Dane.
Aye.
Motion carries 401.
Let's move to agenda number 7, council members' report and comments.
So,
I attended a Sonoma Clean Power Board meeting on the 2nd of December. And just a couple of brief things. First of all, the Sonoma Clean Power is managing, even in the rising cost of energy, the kind of period we're in, that they are managing to keep the rates close to a level and adjusting as they need to try to go through the peaks and valleys and to keep their customer base happy with the rates as they are. And the other thing that they continue to be an advocate for the ratepayers of California, and have managed to get PG&E to be disallowed from providing a subsidy to their 100% solar choice plan, which apparently they were giving a tremendous discount to people that signed up for this plan that was far better than any regular plan. And so they've got them to be disallowed from doing that anymore. But anyway, that's what I have.
Yeah. And I don't have any reports because we haven't had an SVCAC since the last meeting, but I would like to suggest, obviously, attached to this agenda item is all the different council committee appointments. And I know some of that changes with the new mayor and vice mayor, but also we have a new council member, and I would like to either now or at maybe the next meeting possibly reorganize some of this, because I think Councilwoman Lowe would be great on some of these things.
It's typically scheduled for your first meeting in January.
Okay.
Council assignments.
Okay.
Councilwoman Lowe, do you have any report?
No, because I have not assigned to any committees yet, as was pointed out by my colleague. I was trying to get away with that for a while. Just sort of hide here on the side, right? No, but even though I'm not on a committee, obviously I've been working with obviously the Sonoma Developmental Center and trying to work with stakeholders and find out as much as possible. And with everyone's permission, there was a request from the MAC for someone to reach out to them, and if there's no objection, I will be happy to do that.
That's great.
I would be more than okay with that. Yeah.
And also, you are also working hard with SDC.
Yeah, that's
well.
right. And also, I am
very important.
Still working on the youth council.
Yes.
We did have, along with
that's great.
Councilmember Barnett. So, but I'm looking forward to January because I just don't have enough free, stuff to find it.
I have the one I need to report. That is the December the 6th. And we have the meeting, Sonoma Valley Groundwater Sustainability Agency meeting. And that is we unanimously approved the historic document. That is the Sonoma Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan. Yeah, we, proved that is the really, really, break ground, issue. So this plan basically is for the next 20 years. We will update, improve, and every 5 years. So and also easy way we can see what that means. So in the future, groundwater could be charged by the county. Yeah. So that is I was selected as the liaison for the fee and the rate committee. Yeah, so I work closely with the consulting company, try to set up a reasonable fee for groundwater for wells owners use in the future. Yeah, that is all. Okay, the next one, let's move to agenda number 8, city manager comments and announcements.
Under future agenda items, the question I have for the council is, you have a joint meeting January 12th with the CSEC committee. We have our housing element kickoff meeting Tuesday, January 25th, and that's a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. You have your regular meeting on January 19th. The question for the council is, while you're at it, would you like to have a joint meeting with the DRHPC to talk to them about the DR portion of HPC? And they actually meet January 18th. And that's on a Tuesday. That's a Tuesday, right? Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday.
And it'd be the day before your regular meeting.
So, okay. So the 12th is CSEC, right?
That's correct.
And then 19th is us, and there was a third one you.
The 25th is the housing element.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm fine with that, but I don't know.
I'm okay.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Toy. I skipped the 2021 annual assignments. You know, that one we should discuss today or the next year?
Oh, no, that was just part. Normally, we
Oh,
just
okay.
attach it as a list so people knew what committees you're on if
Okay.
you were going to report.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would
so,
like to, we change it, let the Central Lowe, you know, get the
Yeah.
position.
So, first meeting in January,
Great.
January 19th.
Wonderful.
That will be a
Yeah.
separate
Yeah.
discussion item. Okay. So it sounds like the council's okay for us to do a joint meeting with the DRHPC on January 18th. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Agenda number 9, city attorney comment. Oh,
One future agenda item I'd like to see, I'd like to have a discussion of improved bicycle parking in the plaza.
Ooh, I like that.
okay, that's
Good
yeah,
one.
I like that.
And I have one as well. I'd like to have some discussion of our new campaign finance ordinance that needs to be revised.
Okay. We actually have that one scheduled for at
Perfect.
some point.
Thank you.
Bicycle parking, would it be okay while you have your joint meeting with the CSEC to talk about that then, since theoretically that's part of their mission too?
And I want to say 4 years ago, the CSEC did a whole bicycle parking plan. Or some work already exists on this. They just needed to, it became an aesthetic issue, which I do think is important on the plaza. I'll just say that right now. But I agree, let's do that.
All right, agenda number 9, Mr. Water. Any comments?
I have no comments for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda number 10, adjournment. Yeah. Happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays.
Yes.